Okay, welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well and I hope everything is set up correctly. We've got a bit of a different setup today. Hopefully the audio is coming through. Is it? Okay, it looks like it is coming through. So so we've got a bit of a different setup today. That you can't see, but I can see, and it's around me. And I'm gonna hope that I've configured everything correctly, but we will see. So thank you for joining. For those who have already joined, I can see there's 16 people here. So please say hello in the chat if you are already here. I see Louis and Manira already. What legends! And what I'm going to say straight off the bat is there was a delivery that was supposed to happen at, that was supposed to come to my house today at some time. It hasn't come yet, so I'm assuming it's probably going to come at some time during this stream. So I might have to run out for 2 seconds midstream. But it'll be a brief hitch. Buddha is in the chat. Life Strike, Void Occupant, welcome everyone. Greenleaf. So I need to plug my phone in as well. So you will already know from, and Antcraft is here as well. So you'll already know from the title of the stream and the thumbnail and the fact I've done a video on it recently that today's stream is about Efilism. So I will give a tiny bit of background around that, and mainly what I want to do in this stream is basically go over why some people thought it was shit, why some people thought it was good, but there were bad elements. Basically, I want to go over the critiques and the points made against it. Some of it I think is valid, some of it I think is just a matter of a different opinion, and some of it I think comes from confusion around what I've said. Which I kind of expected all of those, to be honest. You know, it's a big topic that people have debated for a while and people have gotten very heated. So it was not like it was a topic that I was going to resolve or anything like that. And there was obviously always going to be people who disagreed. But in this, am I in the center? No. In this stream, what I'm going to do is basically, I've got some notes that of general points that I am going to cover. Sort of points that have been I've either seen around or people have come directly to me or I've seen in comments, or this sort of stuff that I just want to cover in general. There's only a few of them, and then we're going to go into reacting to specific responses. And there are 3 responses that we're going to cover, which I will let you know what they are now. And because of the new setup, I've just got to jig things around a bit. So hopefully this is going to work. Bear with me. So, boom. Yes. Okay, you can see that. So, this is the first thing we're going to react to. Obviously, I've downloaded all of these, boosted the volume, yada, yada, yada. Also, I don't know if there's a problem on my end, and that is why... Oh, okay, someone has just messaged in the chat. But yeah, if you're watching already, there's 21 people watching. Please do say hello in the chat. Another thing I was going to say is... Let me go back to me for a bit. Another thing I was going to say is, throughout this stream, because there's going to be a lot of points that I'm going to be talking about, it's probably going to go a bit in depth. So the nerds amongst you are probably going to love this one. So I'm probably not going to be looking at every message in the chat. So if there's a point you want to make or a question you want to ask or anything, or just show support, then please use the pinned message in the chat. Send it through via a donation, because then it will pop up on screen. I'll see it. If you don't want to send money, or you don't have money to send, that is completely fine. Do put it in the chat and I will try and notice it and get to it. Cool. Yes, that was the only other thing I was going to say. Okay, so back to this one. So, yeah, we're going to be looking at this response. So this is actually a very short one. It's less than a minute. It's just a segment on Tejas's antinatalism this week. So does a very brief response. So we will go through that. The next one after that we're going to get to is Matt at Life Sucks. So I don't know if you guys know his channel. He has been on the sorry, because of the new setup, I'm looking at a different place, and it's weird to get used to. But yeah, so Matt has been on the channel before. He does great art, and I really enjoy his videos. He does, well put together videos in terms of like they're very like aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, he did a response. He was not a fan at all of the video. I have seen this one. I've also seen Tejas's one. Just so people know, I don't just where people are coming from. I don't know if Tejas would identify himself as an Efilist, but he had some good and bad things to say. Matt, he is an Efilist, so it's kind of understandable if he didn't like the video, because I would say it was much more critical than it was praiseworthy. And then the last one that we're going to get to is this one from a channel called Emendum. So I'll have more to say on Emendum before we actually get into the response. One thing I do want to say though about this one is that he does his videos in a weird way where he uploads them on another site and then reacts to himself on YouTube, which I don't understand the logic behind, but I'm sure there is at least some. So this video that you're seeing here is him reacting to himself. I have had a brief look at this one, and like as far as I can tell, there wasn't really anything substantive to go over, and he is just reacting to himself. So we're not going to be looking at this video. I'm not going to cover this video. I'm going to cover the two videos that he's done on the other platform. So I've downloaded those and got those together. So this one, Tejas's one, is about a minute. This one is about half an hour. This one is 2 hours long. So this is going to be a fucking long stream. But what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to watch this one on 2 times speed. So it's only an hour long. Because honestly, you have to pay me a lot of money to sit through 2 hours of that. So, okay, let's come back onto me. So that now you know what we're going to be covering. I want to quickly, let me just figure things out. Boom. Okay. So, yes. So before we get into those reactions, I want to cover a few things in terms like general points. Sorry if I'm mincing my words a bit more than usual and I'm a bit slower than usual. It's because of the new setup. I'm having to concentrate on things I haven't concentrated on before, and it's fucking me up a bit. Welcome to the chat, Bovine Blue Stocking. Someone in what I think is a Russian. Is in Russian. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Mario, welcome to the chat. Libertarian, welcome to the chat. Dozy, Hermit, Kodak, Sundus, Milo, and the Antinatal Lope. So, let's cover the the general points first. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to cover that people didn't like about the video, and a lot of people actually a lot of people commented some people commented on. So the first one was that I didn't mention Emendum. Now, I'm assuming most people are probably familiar with the ins and outs of this somewhat, but basically the reason people are surprised that I didn't mention Emendum is because he originated the term Efilism. Now, there's a few things to say on this, and this critique is mentioned in a couple of the videos. So I'll go over like my reasons why I didn't put a particular note on Emendum, and then I will share my reaction to the response to that. So this video was intended as, and it was, focusing on the arguments and ideas and the view of Efilism, right? So I know there's drama around the individuals, you know, and between the individuals and stuff like this that are associated with or you know, coined the term Efilism. That video wasn't about that. I wasn't looking to get into any of that. I was just trying to look at the ideas and primarily that also how they connected to antinatalism or didn't connect to antinatalism. So yeah, so the main thing is I was covering the ideas. So yes, Emendum coined the term. I wasn't around at the time. Like, well, I was alive, but I wasn't around in this area of the, you know, internet at the time that he coined. But it's generally known he coined the term, and he also, my understanding is, he popularized the ideas around Efilism online, specifically on YouTube as well. So those are reasons why people thought he should get a mention in this video, and I can understand that. The reason I didn't particularly mention him is because, like I said, I was focusing on the ideas, and I've spoken to actually quite a few people who adhere to the ideas and views behind Efilism, right? You would, for all intents and purposes, call them an Efilist. And I've also spoken to self-identified Efilists, people who have used the term to identify themselves, and they've never even heard of Emendum. Like, you know, and even in some cases, 2 cases that I can think of, I've even shown them a picture of him and they've not recognized him. So I understand that, like, our part of the internet, the people watching this now, like the people that are watching this and, you know, sort of, you know, they really get into the politics and this sort of stuff around this area of the internet. Like, this is something that we are, or a lot of people are, like, precious about and really heavily associate with one specific person. But, like, honestly, if you step out of this area of the internet, these ideas are still known, and they are not, like, in my experience, associated with him as an individual. Now, those are the general reasons why I didn't bother mentioning him, because I didn't think it was, like, really useful to, when I was discussing the ideas of a specific view, to like connect it to a specific individual like that. Although I can understand why people think that is a bigger mission, especially if they're coming from this space. One, because it would have been very easy to mention him, which, looking back on it and seeing the reaction, I can kind of, you know, I can kind of understand that now. If I did the video again, I probably would briefly mention him. I probably would just say, you know, the term Efilism, it means this, blah, blah, blah. And it was coined by a guy who runs the YouTube channel Emendum. And he worked to popularize these ideas online in the past decade or whatever. Yeah, personally, I don't really feel like I feel like that would have been sufficient. And if I had my time again, I probably would have done that, because then it would have just avoided people focusing on that. So that's fair enough. And it's also fair enough that, like, I did have a section on history, and I did mention individuals in that. So then someone could say, well, why didn't you just mention him as well as another individual in that section? Fair enough. Yeah. So if I had my time again, I would do. I'm not going to go back and change. I mean, unless I was going to upload another video, then, you know, I can't go back and change it. I'm not going to go back for that. But I have put a mention in the description. I feel like that's probably the best I can do at this point. So yeah, that critique, I would say, I don't really think it's that big a deal, but if that is something you care about, then it's fair enough critique. And if I had my time again, I would just like briefly mention him. So yeah. Right, what is next? The next one is... This live stream is not sponsored. The next point is downplaying violence. So I've seen from a couple of people saying that in the video I downplayed the violence that is associated with Efilism and individuals that espouse Efilist views. Now, I just saw Sentient Soy Boy's message. Yeah, Huel getting some free promo. Yeah, I really like Huel's stuff. So I don't know if anyone else uses them, but anyway. So, yeah. So how I would kind of respond to that is, again, I was focusing on the views and ideas behind Efilism. I wasn't looking to survey the dynamics of any community or individuals associated with Efilism. So, like, yeah, I recognize that, you know, there have been Efilists that have advocated for violence in the here and now. And yeah, and obviously I condemn that. And there was even a confusion, which again I clarified in the description, that at one point in the video I seemed to say that violence, a commitment to violence, is basically inherent in Efilism, and then I later say no specific Efilist has to support violence. Now, it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't contradicting myself. I just worded something very badly, which I've clarified in the description. What I was saying in that point is, I think I used the term real world, like real world uses of violence. What I meant by that is in the real world here and now. So, in my understanding of Efilism, the commitment to violence is a commitment to violence that would help achieve sentient extinction where it is necessary. Like if someone is going to be committed to violence inherently by being an Efilist, then I feel like it's only fair to say that they're committed to the minimum necessary amount of violence that is sort of needed to get the end state that they're orientated towards. So yeah, that distinction there was that there is this conceptual commitment to violence, but that is different from individual Efilists supporting violence in the here and now, that in no way could really be reasonably aligned with the sort of violence that, at least if they're trying to like if someone went out and committed some act of violence now, in no way could they reasonably justify it, in my understanding, someone may prove me wrong, with the commitment, with the support of violence that is inherent in Efilism. Because that support of violence is only really relevant much further down the road when you're sort of really getting into the sort of swing of things when bringing about sentient extinction, which we're nowhere near right now. So that was a confusion there. I've clarified that in the description. But yeah, hopefully it's clear what I meant now. But yeah, people thought I was like downplaying violence to do with Efilism. So yeah, like I said, there have been individual Efilists who have supported or supported violence in the here and now, and that's not something that yeah, that's not something that I would try and like hide or anything like that. I mean, if someone's going to do that, they're going to do that, and then we can condemn them, like, whatever. But the reason it wasn't in the video is because that just wasn't what the video was about. The video was about the ideas behind Efilism, and I feel like I made it pretty clear that there is an inherent support of a use of force, which in all reasonable, like in any practical case, is going to include violence. So, yeah, I feel like that kind of explains that. The next point is that I've seen is that I was putting too much effort into separating antinatalism and Efilism, and I was like really contriving this difference, this separation. I will just say straight off the bat that I don't think I was. Like, my examination of their similarities and differences was genuine. And I was just coming at it from a conceptual point of view. So I recognize there is overlap between antinatalism and Efilism when it comes to the people who hold those views, or the origins of those views, at least like online, in the online versions, because they came out of similar discourses, you know? So that I can understand, there's like overlap there and similarities there, but those aren't conceptual overlaps or similarities. So yeah, I just want to make it clear that like the sort of daylight that I was explaining that's between them was conceptual daylight. Another relationship that between antinatalism and Efilism that has been raised to me, which maybe is closer to a conceptual link, but I still don't think it is this relationship that if antinatalism were subscribed to and adopted by everyone, then it would result in human extinction. And, well, in practice, because we don't have like life extension technologies at the moment, and therefore, given that we would be on the path to extinction, we have to sort of face this question of whether we want to help wild animals and what do we want to do about that situation. So this relationship between antinatalism and Efilism there is this idea that antinatalism kind of forces you to ask the Efilist question, which, if someone considers that a conceptual link, which I don't, then that's fine. That's something they share, right? That is something that antinatalism and Efilism share. I understand that line of thinking. I just don't consider it a conceptual similarity. I'll go over, like, conceptually why I don't think that is, and then I'll give an example. I'll apply it to an example, a different example, to sort of show this relationship in a different situation, which will hopefully sort of will sort of remove us from our comfort zone so that we can understand why it's sort of different. So the reason I don't see that, why I don't see them as conceptually linked, is because antinatalism and Efilism aren't founded on the same ideas necessarily. So Efilism seems like it has to be founded on some form of philosophical pessimism. Antinatalism doesn't. It just commonly is, and my antinatalism is at least partly founded on philosophical pessimism. But they don't have to share that root, so that's one conceptual difference. They're structured very differently. Efilism is an end-state orientated set of ideas, ideology, however you want to put it. Antinatalism isn't end-state orientated. It's just a moral opposition to a specific action. Whatever consequence comes from that is not really inherent in antinatalism itself. I don't see it as, i.e., human extinction would be a consequence rather than a goal. and one doesn't logically lead to another in either direction. So if you're an antinatalist, you don't have to necessarily be an Efilism, in my view. Like there's no strong enough conceptual bridge there that one antinatalism leads to Efilism, and also the other way around. Like Efilism doesn't necessarily lead to antinatalism, as I explained in the video. So those are the sort of general reasons why. And then let me give an example. So take the example of whether we should kill animals for food, right? Or use them for food. So if you give the vegan answer, no, then this would in practice, and everyone adopted that, then in practice this would lead to isolated communities in cold areas. I'm thinking, indigenous people in northern Canada, Russia, wherever. This is going to lead to these people not having a reliable food source, right? If everyone enacted this ethic. That then leads to the question of whether the international community should arrange food shipments to these communities. And that is another moral issue that has resulted from the previous moral issue, the vegan question, being resolved, right? In the same way that antinatalism being resolved, everyone adopting antinatalism, human extinction coming, results in us having to contend with the Efilism question, just like the vegan solution results in us having to contend with this question of how to arrange food for these isolated communities, or whether the international community has obligations to these people. But so I see this as kind of the same relationship that they have, but it's not a conceptual one, right? In my understanding. So like in both cases, or if we focus on the sort of vegan indigenous person in cold area situation, like the two issues like deal with very different questions, right? One is whether it is right to exploit and kill animals, and the other is, do we have obligations to provide aid in the form of food to these isolated rural cold communities? Right? These are like very different questions where you have to weigh up different things, even though one leads to us in practice having to face the other. And having a stance on one either way is not going to, in principle, determine what stance you have to take on the other one in either direction, I don't think, right? So hopefully that's an example of how, I can understand why someone sees antinatalism and Efilism having a relationship in terms of one being embodied by everyone, resulting in a situation where the second moral issue being an important question we have to ask ourselves. That relationship I understand, but I just don't think that's a conceptual, philosophical relationship, right? They're still very different questions that deal with different things. So that would be my general response to that one, I think. Right, I think those are the general points that I wanted to go over. Let's say hello to a few more people, and then we can get into the video reactions. So let me get the videos up. So boom. Bear with me because I am having to do this new setup again. So sorted that out and then bring that up. So okay, so got that ready. Now, before we go on to that, let's very quickly say hello to a few new people in the chat. So we have Milo. I'm not sure if I've said hello already to you, Milo, but hello. Forced Reality. Who else is in the house? Sentient Toy Boy, I've already said hello to you. Depth of Ye. Charlatan, welcome Charlatan, what a lad. Britt, Anna, Hendrick, Razor, I'm not sure if that's how you say your name, but welcome. Robert Watkins, Gareth, Prashanth, welcome does. I think that's everyone. And David Rams says that gym is paying off. I'm not sure if that gym is paying off. I think it's actually fat. Unless you're taking the piss and you're fat shaming me. Right. And David is here to witness me embarrass myself with this new bit of kit. So, okay, let's bring this up. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. So this is Tejas. We are going to be watching his clip, his short clip responding to me. So we'll do this one, then we'll move to the next ones. Let's get stuck in. Hopefully you guys can hear this.
More praise for this work than I have complaints, but just as an example, here's a glimpse.
Can you guys hear that? So I've actually shortened it. Tejas does actually, hang on. Yeah, that's coming through. Okay. Sorry. Cool. All right. So, yeah, so this is actually a shorter version of Tejas's general segment on my video in his thing. But this is like the bit, you know, this I shortened it because this is sort of like the relevant bit. So let's get stuck in.
More praise for this work than I have complaints, but just as an example, here's a glimpse of some points where I would have slightly different take on things. I don't, at least at the moment, agree with the neat separation of positive and negative duties. Now,
Yeah, so this bit here, I didn't quite get. I actually should have messaged him beforehand because there was one word in there that I didn't quite catch. But basically, I think he's saying he doesn't really know if he agrees with the separation of negative and positive duties. I feel like that is a too big a topic to get into here when we're like trying to focus on Efilism. But it's an interesting point that Tejas and I have spoken a bit about before, and maybe Tejas and I can do a whole video on that and the negative and positive duties that someone could derive from antinatalism, and like which ones are actually reasonable to think are sort of inherently carried by the antinatalist position, right? Because in my understanding, the very, I don't know what made that noise, but yeah, it very like basically, and I might be getting this wrong, my understanding in the basic separation, at least in this instance for negative and positive duties, is that the negative duty that comes with antinatalism is like it's something that like is anyone can basically do unless they're imposed upon, right? So unless someone like I don't want to say the word in case it triggers YouTube, but forces themselves on you sexually and gets you pregnant, other than those cases, like we can choose to abstain from sex or use contraception and this sort of stuff. So it's like as long as you've got the equipment available to you, or you can just abstain, it's very easy and low effort to adhere to this negative duty of antinatalism, right? To not bring sentient beings into existence. Positive duties are slightly different though, because positive duties, at least in this context, are like, as an antinatalist, you might have very minimal positive duties. I could understand that. Like, you know, as an antinatalist, you have a sort of very minimal positive duty to, if there's some sort of proposition put forward in your parliament that would prevent birth rates going up or even lower birth rates, then, you know, all else being equal, maybe you have a positive duty to like vote for that, because that's very low effort. It depends on what the vote is, but you wouldn't be like imposing on someone. It's sort of a legitimate part of your the democratic system you live in. This is sort of like a minimal positive duty in antinatalism that I could kind of get behind. But like the positive duties that come into focus in discussions around antinatalism, and I think that Tejas is probably thinking of, are much more extensive. These are like intervening in the wild, and preventing, births from happening. Like, whether or not you think that is a good thing, like, I am in principle pro intervening in the wild, and the use of contraception I think is a valid part of that. But I see it as something separate from antinatalism. Like, I don't think it's an inherent part of antinatalism. I don't think antinatalism commits you to that position, right? I think you have to have other views coupled with the antinatalist view to generate that positive duty, right? And people contest those other views. So that's kind of why I don't think, because those positive duties that are generally discussed are much more extensive and like include the significant interference into the lives of others, that's why I don't think they come inherently with antinatalism. I think it's like unreasonable to tie them inherently to antinatalism, because I think people can reasonably disagree on them. But that's not to say you can't support such an action independent of antinatalism. I think a lot of people get confused, even people I've spoken to a lot about this. People get confused that if I say I don't think something's part of antinatalism, I therefore think it's bad or not worth pursuing, right? Which is not the case. Like, I feel like I've said quite a lot of times, I don't think intervening in the lives of wild animals is part of antinatalism, but it's still something I support in principle. Like, there are many ways that we can, in a considered way, go and intervene in the lives of wild animals to help them. And I support, but it's just not part of antinatalism as I see it. So, yeah, hopefully. But anyway, I feel like that discussion about positive and negative duties is one Tejas and I should get into more. And perhaps we could have a discussion about it with Benatar as well, if he's open to that. So, yeah, but I feel like I've said enough on that now. This is why it's going to be a long stream, because we've been going for fucking ages and we're only 14 seconds into the first reaction.
This may change in future. I have not read some of the material that Lawrence refers to in his video. For example, I have not read David Benatar's Very Practical Ethics, and I might change my view after that. I also think there is much more common between antinatalism and Efilism than there are differences. The criticism that he points out to Efilism can also be put up against antinatalism.
So this bit's interesting. So Tejas is saying he feels like there's more similarities than differences, whereas I'm the opposite. I feel like there are more differences than similarities. Now, the reason I didn't mention this before is because Tejas is going to have it up on screen, and it's quite useful to have it up on screen. And a few people have said to me, well, these criticisms you made of Efilism can equally be launched at antinatalism. And I think that is both true and not true. I think that it's more untrue than it is true, and the bit that people get wrong about this critique, I think, comes from a misunderstanding of how I'm defining antinatalism. But before I get into that, I'm actually just going to move this so that it is actually in the corner. Boom. Okay. Why is that? Okay, cool. So, where I think it's true is, I'm not actually sure why Tejas has crossed that one out, but I think there's actually only one thing listed here which is true of antinatalism. All the others, I think, are not true of antinatalism, how I use it and how I was using it in the video. So, to go through this list, the first one is difficulty of definition. And actually, that, I don't think, is a critique that I made of Efilism. When I was defining Efilism at the start of the video, I mentioned that a lot of people have found it tricky to define, and I've given my own definition, and people can agree or disagree with that definition. I know some people are going to disagree with that definition. That's fine if people want to disagree with the definition. But the fact that Efilism you ask different people, you get different definitions. That wasn't a criticism of Efilism. That was just saying that many people have many different definitions of it. So that one I would wipe off the list. That wasn't a criticism, but that is actually the only thing that I think it has in common with antinatalism, is that loads of different people have loads of different definitions of antinatalism. So to be clear, the definition I use and that I used in that video and that I'm still using now is the view that it is morally wrong to create new sentient beings. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable definition of antinatalism. It's one that I know a lot of people also use, and that is the one that sort of is in accordance most with how I view antinatalism, how I sort of resonate with it the most. So that's the definition I go by. Under that definition, I don't think any of these other criticisms carry through to antinatalism, but they do to Efilism. And the main reason for that is one of the key distinctions between antinatalism and Efilism is that Efilism is end state orientated. It is defined around that. It wouldn't make sense any other way. Efilism is defined around a goal, an end state that its adherents want to achieve, right? Taking a universe with sentient life to a universe without sentient life. Now, antinatalism isn't that. Antinatalism doesn't have a goal inherent in it, an end state it is trying to achieve. If it is just the moral critique of a specific action, bringing new sentient beings into existence. If you had a world where it was full of moral agents living their lives as they want, they have dignity in death and all of this sort of stuff, but no one makes any new sentient beings, that is as equally an antinatalist world as it is a universe with no sentient life, because neither of those two universes have new sentient beings coming into them. Conceptually, anyway. I can understand in practice an antinatalist would prefer the world with no sentient life if you're looking at them in terms of whether antinatalism is going to arise as an issue again, because the world that still has sentient beings in it, even though they're not creating new sentient beings, there may be some instance in the future where they can do that again, or they start doing that again, or whatever. But conceptually, those two worlds, one without sentient life and one with sentient life but not producing new sentient beings, in my eyes, this is the nerdiest fucking stream I've ever done. Those two worlds are equally antinatalist in my understanding, in my eyes. If people want to disagree with that's completely fine. I'm not going to hate on people for disagreeing with that. We have different understandings. That's my understanding. So antinatalism isn't based around this end state that it wants to achieve, this goal it wants to achieve. That is the key difference. That is one of the key differences between it and Efilism that I feel makes all of these criticisms valid towards Efilism, but fall short when it comes to antinatalism. And I'll go through them. Nirvana fallacy is around, the presentation of this sort of perfect solution to all our problems, but it's just unrealistic. Antinatalism is not presented as a solution to all problems. It is simply the moral critique of one action. If you had an antinatalist world where no new sentient beings were, brought into existence by moral agents, that would not solve all problems. There would still be problems for the existing individuals, right? And those are still important problems. They're just not of antinatalist concern. They would be other views we have would come into contact with those issues. Making the perfect the enemy of the good, again, this is not something antinatalism does. It is just a critique of a specific action. It's not some sort of this is the perfect way forward or whatever. Justifying violence, again, I don't think antinatalism does do that. You can fulfill your negative duties generally by non-action with antinatalism. lack of appreciation for fallibility. Again, I don't. The reason that comes into focus with Efilism is that Efilism is trying to work its way towards some goal, right? But because of human fallibility, like there may be issues along that road. But with antinatalism, I just don't think this idea of human fallibility is really gonna the rubber's not going to hit the road. I mean, maybe you could say, I'm just trying to see how this critique would actually be levied at antinatalism. So it's morally wrong to create sentient beings. Humans are fallible. I don't know, maybe I'm not sure. Maybe someone could say, because humans are fallible, you're drawing the antinatalist conclusion when you shouldn't do. But that's not really about the philosophy. Hard to verify end goal. Antinatalism doesn't have an end goal as far as I see it. Lack of clarity on individual duties. I don't really feel like that's as much of an issue around antinatalism. Like I said before, there might be some limited positive duties that we can quibble about that I think are worth having discussions around. But I don't feel like the negative duties are massively in question. They are debated, but it's at least clear how everything relates to each other. So, for example, people disagree about whether we should create other animals, right? Whether that's an issue or not. I feel like it's very clear that that does fall under antinatalism and we should not be creating other animals, non-human animals. Other people disagree with that, but it's not unclear why those links are drawn, right? Whereas with Efilism, it is kind of unclear. There are conflicting possible duties, right? There are individual duties that conflict with the collective duty that Efilism brings. So there is a lot more confusion there. So yeah, that's those covered. I don't know if people are satisfied with my responses to those. Please let me know by sending stuff in. I'm not really paying that much attention to the chat.
I'm not
Let's finish what Tejas is saying.
saying that nullifies those criticisms, but rather that they are in common with antinatalism. And some of the arguments that are used to defend antinatalism against those criticisms can also be used to defend Efilism.
Right. So let's come back to just me. So that was Tejas's. Ooh. That was Tejas's video. Now let's go to Life Sucks' video. So, it's kind of frustrating because Life Sucks has music in this. I should have taken the music out in the edit. Hopefully it's royalty-free music that Matt has used. But let's actually quickly before we go on to Matt's video, let's see if there's anyone new in the chat. So we've got Kathy in the chat is new, Dark Endless, Sun Eater AM, Matty CR7, T Advice, what a name, XYZ. Welcome everyone to the chat. I hope you're all doing well. All right, let's see what Matt is saying. And I'm just thinking the light is going down. I'm going to put on the video and then I'm going to sort out the lighting situation a bit.
I'm going through projects that are half finished or in some percentage of completion that I've been working on over the past few years. And since I was suicidal during my separation and divorce, I basically stopped working on them. So I'm trying to get back into these projects and finish some of them up. I have over 30 videos that are in some form of completion. The one I'm going to do today was an unfinished drawing that I started years ago. And this one began when the YouTuber Lawrence Anton contacted me and asked me if I had any ideas for a picture that could symbolize antinatalism or anti-procreation. So I put together some sketches and I think I did send them to him. I can't really remember. I asked Lawrence recently and he said he he didn't remember either. But I ended up settling on one that I liked. The idea was to make a sticker that, like the antinatalist t-shirt, you can put it out and...
Yeah, just very quickly on that. Yeah, there was something I was working on a while ago, which kind of never came to fruition. That I reached out to a couple of people about maybe making some art for stickers, like Matt said. And yeah, like I said, it never came to fruition, but I really appreciate Matt putting this together, and it's come out in this video, so it's been used in some way. But yeah, I really appreciate the effort that Matt went to, and the other people that that I reached out to, because they did some good artwork. And I apologize for that never coming to fruition.
The world, and maybe make people curious about the philosophy. The sticker...
Welcome to the chat, Syndicate and Bert van det Bosch and No Injustice Lasts Forever.
Project never ended up happening, but I wanted to finish this drawing anyways. Because if I say I'm going to start something, and if it's already halfway done, you know, I do like to...
Hang on. Why is that not going away? Let me bring it back onto me. Okay, there we go.
Finish it even if it's years later. As usual, I ended up doing a lot of detail in this drawing, so I don't know if it would even look good as a tiny sticker, probably better as a poster or a t-shirt at this point. Originally, I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about in this video. Lawrence said he was going to be updating a website he made, so I was going to review that. It's called the Antinatalism Handbook. Although a more appropriate name for...
I am still working on that. That is in progress. It will probably be released in a couple months' time, but 2.0 of the handbook is coming, and a new translation as well, which is very cool.
Or it might be the Antinatalism FAQ, for frequently asked questions, because that's exactly what it is. It's a series of questions that natalists might ask, with short, concise, paragraph-long responses. So it's a good resource, and he said he's going to update it. Although after I watched his recent video, I worry a little bit about what will be in it. That project might be confused with another antinatalist book called Antinatalism, a Handbook, a paperback book by Kareem Akerma. But the more appropriate name for that book actually might be the Antinatalism Encyclopedia.
Welcome to the chat, Heartborn.
It's a really amazing resource. And it was recently translated into English, so I highly recommend that. But then, as I was inking this drawing and recording myself, Lawrence announced that he was going to be making a video on Efilism, which is Inmendham's version of antinatalism. And videos tend to make better fodder for responses than websites.
Yeah, so there's going to be a bunch of stuff that I'll respond to in Matt's video. I'm not going to super get into it. I kind of have already go into it in the video. I don't consider Efilism a form of antinatalism. The term was coined by Emendham, like I said that earlier, but for the reasons that I've already gone over, I don't think Efilism is a form of antinatalism, but that, you know, people may use different definitions. If they're using different definitions, it may make sense by the definitions they're using. But in my understanding of the two concepts, one's a form of extinctionism, one's a form of antinatalism.
Sites or books, even though I feel like I should review more books and websites on this channel. But honestly, I don't really like talking very much. Recording this voiceover is my least favorite part of making a video. I prefer drawing, so I like letting someone else talk for a minute.
I just saw Kathy says in the chat, how is Efilism not a form of antinatalism? If you want to know the answer to that question, I'm not going to go into it here, although it probably will be partly answered in this stream and probably already has. But go and watch my video.
We bring children in this world and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
We have got a donation through, and with no message. But thank you so much to the legend who sent that. I'm just checking, is that popping up? Yes, that has popped up. Thank you so much to whoever sent that through. You know who it is, absolute legend. No message. If you want to send a message in the chat, I will keep an eye out for it. But But yeah, thank you so much for the support. Absolute legend. And the setup I've got at the moment is an investment from the support you guys have sent me. So yeah, you can't see it, but things are getting more complex here, and it's getting some use to. But thank you so much for the support. The videos I was going to say to Kathy to watch are my recent Efilism one. It's not the most recent video, but it's the second most recent. And then my video on the relationship between antinatalism and extinctionism. Those are sort of the two main. If you watch those videos, you might not agree, but you'll at least understand why I think that the difference is, basically.
Minute as I keep the drawing process going. And I could sample my voice and make an AI voiceover, but YouTube is now flooded with AI voiceover videos, and they do lack quote unquote heart, for lack of a better word, even if the information is good. Let me know in the comments what you think. I assume people would prefer a real human voice. So I will go through Lawrence's new video titled The Ideology That Wants to End All Life. He also made a video a couple weeks ago that I have some problems with called What Antinatalists Get Wrong about antinatalism. He talked about extinction, so I might as well address that too. So please enjoy this inking and coloring of this drawing. The pencil part I did in my drawing group.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I mean, hopefully this would go without saying, but for, like, for everything that I'm going to say in this video in response to what Matt is saying, and obviously we've got some disagreements, like I still, really like his videos. I got nothing against him, personally. I really like the art he does. I really enjoy his videos, so I hope he makes a lot more of them. I think he has said in this video already, or says at some point, that he's got like 30 others in the making. So I'm looking forward to all of those. But yeah.
So after my wife moved out, I literally didn't know a single person in Colorado. So I had to start meeting people because humans are social animals, unfortunately, and I needed to be around people before I went insane. I got a free newspaper in the mail, and it said that there's an old church in town that's been converted into an art community. And once a week they get together to paint or draw or sew or whatever art project they're into at the moment. So I've been going to that and started making friends. I need something to work on when I'm there, so I've mostly just been drawing in my sketchbook. But I can also at least start these projects for videos. I can later finish them on my computer. This is a little weird for me to make a response video to Lawrence because I've been on his channel before and, generally agree with him as he is also a vegan animal rights activist.
Yeah, I've got to say, it shouldn't feel odd doing responses to any of my videos. Obviously, anyone's welcome to do that. It doesn't matter how much alignment we have. If someone has some sort of issue with something I say, then, I'm always open to good faith critiques. So yeah, of course, yeah, Matt and I are both antinatalists, both vegan. He's been on my channel before. I'm not going to have anything against him making response videos like this, so it's obviously it's completely cool.
But I have noticed him distancing himself from Efilism over the last few years. He had to have known that Efilist would not like this video. So far as I know, he did not contact any Efilists.
Yeah, I did know that Efilists and maybe even some non-Efilists are not going to like this. In fact, there are some non-Efilists who don't like this video. But yeah, I knew it was going to be it was a video I wanted to do and a topic I wanted to explore and share my thoughts on. So, and yeah, I knew not everyone was going to like it, but that's how the cookie crumbles.
While writing it, but instead sought out Kantian naysayers instead. It would make more sense to, I don't know.
And then Matt is just saying here that he doesn't think I reached out to Efilists while doing this video. I spoke. Well, there's one slight mistake I made in terms of the research here. So I've my understanding of Efilism doesn't just come from the research I specifically did for this video. So I did specifically talk to Efilists with this video in mind, and I've spoken to many Efilists over the years I've been active in this part of the world. And the knowledge that I've gained from that and the understanding I've gained from that, I have also brought in to inform this video. So, yeah, I wasn't completely disconnected from Ephilists and in the making of this video. And specifically in the making of this video, I did pull together a bunch of people who I thought would be valuable in helping me understand some things more, and I bounced ideas off, and Ephilists were included in that. Now, that is the part where I think I did go wrong a bit. So, I'm not going to name specific individuals because I don't know if they would want me to use their name in this context, although I have thanked them. But there were some people that I knew were Ephilist. There were others who I brought on thinking they were Ephilist, and actually in the research discussion that I had, it kind of became more obvious to me that actually they weren't as signed up to Efilism as I thought, I don't think, although they still provided valuable insight. So if I had my time again, in the research discussion that I did hold, which was only one part of me trying to gain an understanding, there was loads of other stuff, but in that research discussion that I did hold, I would have made sure more Efilists were present, and Matt would have been a really good one to include. I actually can't think of why I didn't reach out to Matt. There would have been a reason, but I don't know what it would have been. He did reference the fact that he was going through a hard time, and maybe at the time I didn't want to contact him for that reason, but honestly, that's just me speculating. I can't think back in time now and think why I didn't reach out to Matt. Yeah, I can't think of why. But yeah, I did consult Ephilists. I've interacted with many Ephilists, so yeah. And obviously people are going to disagree on this, but I don't think I was particularly malnourished in my exposure to Ephilists, because I think that what I put forward in my video was valid. Obviously, I know other people don't agree with that, and that's why there have been responses and stuff, but that will just come down to disagreements, misunderstandings, or whatever. So, yeah. If I had my time again, obviously you can always do things better. But yeah, I feel like I had sufficient exposure to Ephilists and Efilism.
Ask the person who founded the philosophy what the proper definition is. You know, not one of these faceless fence sitters. But I think that he probably intended to make a negative response to Efilism the whole time.
None of the definitions. I didn't set out to make a negative response to Efilism. I just set out to hang on a minute. I will finish that thought, but I will be right back. Sorry, I thought that was the delivery, but it wasn't. So my bad. Okay, sorry. Going back to Matt, I'm actually going to have to go back a tiny bit to remember where I was.
Negative response to Efilism the whole time.
Right, yeah. No, I wasn't planning the whole time to make a negative response to Efilism. I was planning to make a video that was sharing my understanding and thoughts on Efilism, but as I've come to understand Efilism, I've come to understand that I personally am not one, and I don't think that it is like particularly similar to antinatalism conceptually, and yeah, I think the other things I said in the video. So, like, yeah, I don't think that framing is entirely correct, that I set out wanting to make a negative video about Efilism, because that kind of suggests like, you know, I was like poisoning the well in my mind. I was just trying to engage with the ideas as I saw them. And I fell on the side of thinking that the view, yeah, was liable to the criticisms I made, and not a view that I hold. I shared the sympathies that I have. Like, there will be many things that someone who is an Ephilist will say that I will agree with, and there'll be others I disagree with. So yeah, I didn't set out, you know, to make a negative video or be a naysayer. That was just where my understanding of the subject took me. So yeah. None of the definitions that I came across were really crisp or concise, and often just didn't cut to the core of what I understand Efilism to be. So instead, I've put together a few... Yeah, anyway, we can... few definitions that I believe are crisp and concise, and get to the core of what I think people mean when they talk about Efilism. So there are 3 definitions that I'm going to cover, but I want to make... Well, I guess actually maybe I can share this. So Matt also made reference to the fact I could have reached out to Emendum as well, and, you know, there's a couple of reasons that I didn't. The first is that, like I said before when I was talking about why I didn't mention Emendum, like, ideas can be separate from an individual. I realize he coined the term and helped popularize it, but like, there are many people that have an understanding of Efilism and have no idea who he is. There have been people that have expressed the same basic ideas in the past, all of this sort of stuff. So it's like, you can come to an understanding of the general views captured by a term and not speak to a specific individual. Also, like, I just didn't particularly want to engage with the guy. He doesn't seem like a nice guy. He has made videos about me in the past and, like, not being very nice, and that is not me being a crybaby. It's just, if someone is not going to show you any respect and call you, you know, whatever names, then, like, and I can make a video without engaging with this person, I just don't see why I would entertain that person. And given the way he's, like, spoken about me in the past and not interacted with me, because we've, as far as I can remember, never interacted directly with each other before, but I just don't think he would be able to have a helpful conversation with me. Like, if you see, I understand there are certain people that he has had fruitful conversations with, but if you just look at the stuff that he has, yeah, if you look at some of the interactions he's had, then I have no reason to think that my interaction with him wouldn't descend down that way. So, yeah, I just didn't feel like I needed to and didn't want to interact with the guy, to be honest. I don't particularly see him in a positive light. I can see in the chat Matthew is saying ad hominem. I don't know if Matthew is saying that about something else in the chat or saying I'm making an ad hominem against Emendum. It's not an ad hominem. I'm not making an argument against him. It's not part of an argument. I'm merely expressing my feelings towards the guy, and my feelings were part of why I didn't interact with the guy for this video. So it's not an ad hominem when you're talking about your feelings towards someone. I'm not dismissing any of his ideas based on that. So yeah, I'm not dismissing Efilism based on him or anything like that. So yeah. Clear now that I only think one of them really captures what I understand Efilism to be. Unnamed. The view that existence is a net negative and that it would be better. Kathy is saying, watch more of his videos. Most people who crap on him haven't seen many, unfortunately, only the odd video. I've seen quite a lot of his videos over the years. So, yeah. And Matthew says, thank you for being respectful. I think he was respectful to you. I can assure you, Matthew, you're wrong. You're wrong on that. And you will learn how wrong you are when we get to the video that we're going to react to of his in this stream. I'm hoping we get through all of it because it is going to be very long. I haven't watched all of Emendum's 2 videos that I put together to react to here, so we're doing a lot of it fresh. I've watched some of it, but also been informed by others who have seen all of it. He's he's not particularly respectful. I mean, he's not particularly a respectful guy from my experience of watching his stuff, but yeah. So if there were no sentient life in the universe. Now, this definition I don't consider to be Efilism at all. Like I said, the reason I included it is to kind of make a clarification. I've heard quite a few self-identified Efilists define Efilism in this way, and I think it's a misuse of the term and lacks a key normative component that will be captured in the next 2 definitions. It just seems to be philosophical pessimism. Philosophical pessimism is a philosophical tradition that argues that life is a net negative and the non-existent. I don't remember Matt's video being like this, so I'm hoping it's not skipping, but is preferable to existence.
I've never heard of these 3 supposed categories of Efilism.
Yeah, so these aren't established categories of Efilism. In fact, I explicitly say one of them isn't Efilism. Well, I actually say that 2 of them aren't Efilism, only one of them is. So they're not 3 categories of Efilism. They are, one is a clarification. So the first one is actually philosophical pessimism, or closer to philosophical pessimism. It's just I see that confusion made a lot, so that's why I was covering that one. The other 2, one is what I understand Efilism to be. The other one is close to it, but I was not putting these as like, you know, categories of Efilism or anything. Later in the video, I do say this specific definition that I'm presenting here is what I understand Efilism to be.
I don't think Emendum has ever talked about them. The first version he mentions seems to be more Schopenhauerian pessimism.
Yeah, which I do say in the video. So I think Matt might have slightly misunderstood what I was getting at, but yeah.
Many people have compared Schopenhauer and Emendum before, even though their philosophies are different.
And we have a new member of the channel. So welcome, Nadia. Becoming a member, a legend of the channel. I don't know if that's going to pop up on screen at any point, but thank you so much for supporting the channel and becoming a member. Yeah, and that actually reminds me, if you want to support the channel and become a member, you can. I've now enabled membership, so that is like signing up to the Coffee account. So if you become a member or support me on Coffee, then or Ko-fi, whatever, however you pronounce it, you then get access to a supporter community Discord where we have hangouts. You get early access to content, stuff like that, and generally have a good time. But yeah, thank you so much, Nadia, absolute legend, for the support. Thank you so much.
Schopenhauer was writing at the same time. Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill created the idea of utility. Yet Schopenhauer rejected consequentialism in favor of compassion-based ethics. Bentham was focused on reforming laws and institutions, while Schopenhauer was more interested in metaphysical pessimism and aesthetics. So that's a huge difference. And that is what separates antinatalism and Efilism. One is reformist in nature, and the other is conformist, apparently, and is in love with the status quo. David Benatar has also expressed his disinterest in extinction and any kind of activism beyond publishing books on ethics. Unfortunately, neither Bentham or Mill ever mentioned.
I think, like, there's this, I feel like that, yeah, there's this sort of idea that floats around in antinatalist circles, and I feel like it's kind of embedded in what Matt is saying here, that, like, antinatalism is inadequate to solve all of the world's problems. and therefore, I don't know, that is a sort of general mark against it. Like, yes, antinatalism isn't going to solve all the world's problems, but that isn't a mark against it. Like, it's just one position on one thing, right? Like, we all have our ethics where we have different positions on different things, and we combine those to sort of generate this view of how we think the best world will look, morally speaking, right? Antinatalism doesn't claim to present a full picture of what the world should look like Efilism does. That's not a shortcoming of antinatalism. It just means that's not the purpose of antinatalism. That's not what it's supposed to do. It is just a specific view of a specific action. It's a specific position on procreative ethics. You can be an antinatalist and all sorts of other things and combine those to generate a view of how you think the world should look like in general. I get that, Efilism presents a whole view of what the world should look like in under one view, but it's not an issue that other people can combine multiple views to get the same sort of, this is what I want the world to look like. So the fact that antinatalism doesn't solve all the world's problems, that I just don't see that as a problem. It is addressing one issue, and we can hold other views to address other issues. Yeah, I don't really know how else to explain it. But let's go back a tiny bit, and maybe I can.
In any kind of activism beyond publishing books on ethics. Unfortunately, neither Bentham or Mill ever mentioned Schopenhauer, but he was not well known in England during his lifetime, and his opus, The World as Will and Representation, was not fully translated into English until 1958. Schopenhauer was influenced by Kantian ethics, and Bentham's utilitarianism is basically the opposite of Kantian ontology.
Efilism, the view that existence is a net negative and that it would be better if there were no sentient life in the universe, and that humans have a moral duty to bring about sentient extinction. Efilism differs from what we've just been discussing because it introduces a normative component, the view that humans have a... It's very bizarre. I've just realised that I'm in one corner and the other corner as well. Moral duty to bring about sentient extinction.
The second version is more correct and identifies.
The reason it's more correct is because that was the actual definition that I was presenting. The other one wasn't. Just to clarify for people.
Identifies Efilism as an activist ethical framework, which I always thought it was. And this is more in line with Bentham's utility concept, that applied ethics and social reform is the entire point of ethics. Merely writing about right and wrong, good and bad in an ivory tower isn't going to solve the problem if it's only read by fence sitters. As Bentham says, the past is finished, so ethics don't really apply to it anymore. The present is just the future's past, so it doesn't matter either. All of the value is in the future. Therefore, we have an opportunity to improve the future, and a failure to do so is simply unacceptable blindness, glibness, and maliciousness. To do nothing to save the future isn't simply wrong to an Efilist, it's evil. It's no different than seeing a child drowning and simply walking past her, or maybe even stepping on her head. Lawrence then goes into extinctionism, which he did a separate...
I would say I don't necessarily disagree with everything Matt is saying. I would say there are meaningful differences between Efilism and the this imagery that he's talking about the child in the pond, like Peter Singer's famous thought experiment. I'm not going to get into all the nuances now because this is already going to be a really long stream, but yeah. There are some things that I'm agreeing with Matt and some things I'm disagreeing.
Video on, and I'll segue into that for a moment. But we'll also mention that Amanda Sukanik and Monty Hari wrote an entire book on this very subject that you can read if you want to deep dive into the two subjects.
I don't think antinatalism is extinctionism. This is an extremely common mistake I see people make. So it's equating the idea that antinatalism, as in the view that it's morally wrong to bring sentient beings into existence, is the same as wanting sentient beings or human beings to go out of existence, i.e. extinction. I understand extinctionism to mean that you think it would be preferable if X group, i.e. humans or all sentient beings or all life or whatever, it would be preferable if they no longer existed, i.e. there was extinction. Antinatalism is concerned specifically with the starting of lives, but extinction is concerned with both the starting and the ending of lives, because to achieve extinction you need no new lives to be coming into existence, but you also need the existing lives to end, otherwise you don't have extinction.
I mentioned extinctionism in my coloring book under the page Graceful Exit, which is the planned extinction of a species. As Schopenhauer always said, suffering is inevitable, so extinction is the one and only way to remove the problem permanently. That is what the utility concept is all about: efficiency. Why would you make a band-aid like transhumanism that doesn't actually solve the origin of the problem? The termination of evolution should be the endgame. As the book I mentioned says, yes, you can be an antinatalist who is against extinctionism. For example,
I'm not actually even sure that Matt would stand by that. The end of evolution is the goal, I think, is how he said it. Let me go back and check how he said it, and then I'll give my thoughts why.
As the book I mentioned says, yes, you can be an antinatalist who is against extinctionism. Why would you make a band-aid like transhumanism that doesn't actually solve the origin of the problem? The termination of evolution should be the endgame.
Yeah, the termination of evolution should be the end game. I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure. Understanding Matt's views as I do, I don't like, and maybe I'm misunderstanding them, but I don't think he would even think that, because if, like I said, there was no more reproduction, but all the existing beings in existence remained in existence, that would be the end of evolution, because there would not be any more reproduction for natural selection to engage with, for evolution to happen, right? So evolution would be terminated, and yet we would still have a world full of sentient beings. That would not be an Ephilist world. So I'm not even sure that is the end goal as Matt sees it. I think the end goal as Matt sees it is the end of all sentient life, but that goes beyond terminating evolution.
As the book I mentioned says, yes, you can be an antinatalist who is against extinctionism. For example, you could be against people having children because it violates consent and imposes death and suffering on a victim who didn't need to exist. But you could also want immortality for yourself. I tend to think that the more deontological or religious antinatalists are really life lovers and want to live forever.
I don't know why he would think that. Some of the deontological I don't really know any religious antinatalists, or I don't know if he was using religious in a not really strict way there, but in terms of deontological antinatalists, like the deontological antinatalists I've known have been some of the most pessimistic. The utilitarian ones I've known, like it goes both ways. Like I've known deontological
We bring children in this world, and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much for the support. I'm just going to finish my thought, and then I will get to your message and donation. But thank you so much. I was just going to say, like, I've known utilitarian and deontological antinatalists who are both completely kind of fine with how their life is and kind of happy to go along with it. But at the same time being an antinatalist. And then I've also known ones that like hate life, not even necessarily have depression, but just are deeply pessimistic. And like, I would put myself in that category. Like, I don't hate life in a sort of emotional, visceral sense, but I think it's a deeply flawed thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm very philosophically pessimistic. So I kind of feel like it's unfair to characterize the ontological antinatalist like that. Because, yeah, I've known quite a few who are, yeah, very, very pessimistic. Let's get to the super chat from Nadia. Thank you so much, Nadia. Nadia says, Hallochen, I hope I'm saying it right, Hallochen aus Berlin. I assume that means hello from Berlin. I need to save Schengen area visa time for a July conference in Zurich. I'm heading to the UK soon. Very cool, very cool. Great Efilism videos, by the way. Thank you so much, Nadia. Absolutely legendary stuff. And thank you for the support and being a member as well. Absolute top legend. Cool. I see there's a lot of debate going on in the chat as well. I am not following any of that, so I have no idea what's going on. But let's keep going.
I just don't see that view as logical. Ephilists, I've noticed, are often depressive realists because we understand that we're in a meat grinder, and every day that goes by is a bad day for someone. And
yeah, I like any philosophical pessimist, I feel like is going to view the world in that way. Not just Ephilists. Yeah. So yeah, I would say like I see the world in that way.
And it's a lot of someone's, and it's absolutely disgusting, and it needs to end, like yesterday. You cannot separate anti-procreation ethics from extinction ethics, because the end of birth would mean the end of the species. It's a fact that you just can't ignore. Some people just stubbornly and strangely choose to deny that inescapable fact. But I have found that devotees of Kant and Jesus tend to ignore consequences and live in a Steve Jobs-style reality distortion field. Environmentalist activists like Let's Unite are for the extinction of humanity, but not the animal species, which also doesn't make any sense because the natural world of predation is the ultimate horror show that's happening on this planet. It is what needs to be removed first, because the animals can't help themselves.
Efilism, though, can be divided into two further subcategories. Some Efilists maintain that extinctions should be brought about by any means necessary, provided that the means being used is expected to minimize harm. Other Efilists maintain that only non-violent and non-coercive means should be used, and if these means aren't available, then we should just desist from pursuing extinction. We can call these views Efilism with force for the former and Efilism without force for the latter. Although Efilism without force doesn't seem to be a reasonable view in practice, as bringing about sentient extinction is going to require the use of violent and coercive means, but the view forbids such means. So it provides humans with a significant duty, but forbids it the means to fulfill that duty. This to me kind of seems incoherent. So in reality, it seems like the definition of Efilism is going to have to contain the acceptance of some use of force.
Emendum always says that we have basically already won in developed countries. The replacement births do not outnumber the deaths, so therefore extinction would be inevitable if it continues. The only ones...
Yeah, I mean, that's assuming it continues. I doubt humans are going to, like, totally stop reproducing. I feel like we are on a downward trend at the moment, but it will likely level out at some point. Like, we're not, even if the population goes, like, very, very low, we're not gonna go extinct, I don't think, through non-reproduction, because there's always going to be certain groups that will want to continue reproducing, even if it's just at a lower level as we are now.
Freaking out about this are the religious nuts and pro-natalists. If enough people accept the ideology that birth is bad, then no force is necessary. Then when it comes to animals, killing them off may not be necessary if we just choose to destroy their habitats or introduce sterilization measures, like a virus that causes sterility. But then that would still be considered using force. You cannot convince a non-human animal with philosophy. As Lawrence mentions, all species go extinct eventually anyways, so why not do it in a structured, sensible way, rather than just being sloppy and glib about it?
It's also worth at this point mentioning the benevolent... I'm not sure I actually mentioned that in the Efilism video. I've said that elsewhere, but yeah. World Exploder thought experiment. This thought experiment was devised in 1958 by Roderick Smart as a reductio ad absurdum to negative utilitarianism. In his paper Negative Utilitarianism, Smart says this: suppose that a ruler controls a weapon capable of instantly and painlessly destroying the human race. Consequently, the use of the weapon is bound to diminish suffering and would be the ruler's duty on negative utilitarian grounds. Would not our benevolent world exploder be truly the saviour of mankind, and for that matter of the animals too? And the discussion of this thought experiment is quite common in Efilist circles under the name the red button thought experiment.
Then Lawrence mentions negative utilitarianism, which prioritizes suffering rather than pleasure, as in classical utilitarianism. And that is basically what Efilism is, the negative utilitarian version of antinatalism.
Again, I'm not sure it's the negative utilitarian version of antinatalism, because I'm not sure how antinatalism comes into that. I mean, it definitely seems like a form of negative utilitarianism, but if it's not generating the conclusion that moral agents should cease reproducing, which I don't think Efilism does, because they need at least humans to keep reproducing to bring about sentient extinction, if that's going to be the thing that helps facilitate it. That is negative utilitarianism, but it's not antinatalism. So yeah.
However, that definition isn't complete, because you have negative utilitarians like David Pearce who advocate for transhumanism, technologically reducing suffering at some point in the future rather than sterilizing or destroying sentience completely.
The next difference is that extinctionism is inherent in Efilism. In fact, Efilism is a species of extinctionism rather than being a type of antinatalism. It's a sentiocentric form of extinctionism rooted in philosophical pessimism. For antinatalism, extinction is simply a practical consequence of the moral duty not to create sentient beings, rather than an explicit goal. Again, I've discussed this topic at length in another video if you want to learn more.
Then Lawrence claims that Efilism is more of a pessimistic philosophy than an antinatalist philosophy. This could just be semantics. It's clearly in both categories. It's also a strongly atheistic philosophy.
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of shared my thoughts on that already, but yeah, I see it as a form of extinctionism, not antinatalism, but I don't need to get into why again. I feel like I've already kind of shared it.
But I think if you were to ask someone familiar with this space, Inmendum would more likely be described as an antinatalist rather than an extinctionist.
I don't know if that's true, and if it is, I think that the person is either making a mistake or they're just using antinatalism in a very different way to at least how I am.
I think Lawrence is trying to separate Inmendum from the antinatalist movement here. More accurately, you could say that Efilism is an
I mean, if there's more daylight between Inmendum and the antinatalist world, then I'm completely happy with that, because I don't feel particularly positively towards the guy, but I don't feel like I'm not setting out to try and push him as far away as possible. I would say it. I'm not trying to bring him closer. But my understanding is that he also does that. I feel like one of the whole points of coining the term Efilism was to separate from antinatalism. So I feel like that's kind of something he wanted to do himself, but I don't know.
Sentient life philosophy. It is sentiocentric antinatalism. Antinatalism, as in philosophical antinatalism, is extinctionism, because consequentially it would lead to the end of the species. He does mention one caveat that...
Again, I've kind of gone over why I don't agree with that, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
For Efilism to succeed in sterilizing the Earth, we may need to keep breeding humans to make sure the animal species go extinct first. This is where the difference between utilitarianism and duty ethics shows up, because the utility concept doesn't have firm rules beyond the first principle of whatever act brings about the best consequences for the greatest number. However, an Efilis think tank I could imagine come up with a way to end it all in one generation, like with nuclear weapons. But it's kind of a moot point because the third world is not stopping with their natalism. We have a ways to go before all 8 billion of us are gone. Someone born today has 80 years or so of life left, which may be enough time to plan for a graceful exit. And of course, we can also leave robots to finish the sterilization.
The next difference is the potential commitment to violence. Antinatalism does not contain any inherent commitment to violence. The commitment is to not creating sentient beings, and this can, by and large, be done through simple non-action. Efilism, though, as I've already covered, likely commits someone to supporting at least some use of force, and that use of force can take a variety of forms, but in any real-world case, violence is going to be part of that. Other animals, and probably many humans, will not voluntarily cease procreating. For extinction to be achieved, existing lives will have to be terminated if they don't come to a natural end, or their continuation risks the wider project of extinction.
So now Lawrence talks about equating Efilism with force, or what he really means is violence. As Robert Heinlein, the writer, said in his novel Star...
Oh, sorry, I didn't finish in time. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't totally equating force with violence. I did lay out other uses of force, but yeah, in practice, violence would be included in that. And I wasn't trying to... Well, let's just see exactly what Matt said, because... Yeah.
Equating Efilism with force, or...
Yeah, I wasn't trying to equate Efilism with force, because there are other aspects to Efilism, but I think that an Efilist view does necessitate some use of force. Whether you consider that equating or not, I guess that's up to you, but I wouldn't call that equating. But yeah, I was laying out that a use of force is kind of inherent in it.
What he really means is violence. As Robert Heinlein, the writer, said in his novel Starship Troopers, violence is not necessarily what you think it is. Heinlein argues that voting, which is the exercise of political authority, is inherently an act of force.
Yeah, the point I was making about it inherently having a use of force is, that wasn't necessarily a critique. That was just me laying it out as I understood it. I wasn't saying whether that was good or bad or not. There are many views that all of us will have that have some condonement of a use of force, right? When I started making commentary about a use of force being bad or very morally dubious was when you start to condone what seems like mass violence, when in your head you can kind of come up with some sort of calculation as to how you think it's justified. And that's even a separate thing about whether it's justified in the abstract. But in practice, even if you can rationalize violence in your head, in practice, it very often doesn't correlate to being justified in practice because there's so many uncertainties in practice. So when you start straying into the world of justifying mass violence, including killing, for what are pretty uncertain outcomes, and like I said, it's very actually hard to verify whether you're trying to get the end goal that you are trying to achieve through the violence is actually very hard to verify anyway. These are just all things that count in favor of it being extremely morally dubious to support this form of violence. So I wasn't saying Efilism has an inherent use of force or condones an inherent use of force, and that the general use of force is what is a mark against Efilism. It was the specifics of the use of force, right, that I've just laid out. I agree we can use force and it be justified in many ways. For example, childhood vaccinations. There is a use of force there because, you're not going to be able to rationally explain to many children why they should get a specific vaccine. And even if you remove that whole element, they may just struggle and not want you to do it. So yeah, like there is a use of force there. I see that as justified because it's generally going to benefit them and wider society, and it is in the vast majority of cases, a very small initiation of force. So yeah, it's just like there are uses of forces which are completely legitimate and justifiable. I was making like specific points against I was using the use of force as a critique against Efilism because of the specific type of use of force it was. And then if you translate it into practice, it's even more of a mark against Efilism because in practice it would just be so uncertain. Yeah.
And force in its most basic form.
Which maybe I'm wrong on. Like, if someone wants to lay out a very reasonable case for how actually very minimal force would be needed, right? And actually you can be pretty certain of the outcomes, then that would actually be a very interesting conversation to have. But at least as I understand it at the moment, that just doesn't seem plausible to me.
Is violence. He suggests that political authority derived from the power to use force is the foundation of all other forms of authority. So I don't think that Lawrence can say that a non-Efilist antinatalist has his hands clean. Heinlein would say that you simply cannot achieve your political goals without using force in some fashion.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, I don't know what I can say. That wasn't what I was saying.
I don't love this rhetoric because it's painting Efilism to be some sort of Black Panther type of terrorist movement, when in reality is the most compassionate stance a person can take. I don't really know why the idea of ending all violence forever and ever is somehow controversial.
Yeah, I feel like there's maybe somewhat of a disconnect there in that something can be motivated by compassion. Like I can understand an Efilist position being motivated by compassion because you just want suffering to stop, but it's the motivations behind someone holding a view is very different from what the entailments of the view are and actually what would need to be done in practice to carry it out. The only similarity I could identify between antinatalism and Efilism is the shared negative view of existence, i.e. being informed by philosophical pessimism. But even that is kind of questionable. Efilism is firmly rooted in pessimism, but antinatalism doesn't have to be. Antinatalism is often rooted in pessimism, but someone can also be an antinatalist because of the risk argument or the consent argument. Neither of these commit someone to philosophical pessimism. None of this feels like particularly strong ground to maintain that Efilism is the logical endpoint of antinatalism, or antinatalism upgraded, or the non-speciesist version of antinatalism. Someone can be an antinatalist and an Efilist, but they would just simply be two views that they hold in tandem, likely both informed by philosophical pessimism.
I do not agree with this either because Inmendham has stated many times that he is not a Schopenhauerian pessimist. He is, however, compassionate as Schopenhauer was, but compassion, i.e. empathy, is not the basis of his ethics. Logic and evolution, an intelligent design, is. Life is a waste engine. Why do you want to keep putting gas in a waste engine? To me, the majority of antinatalists just don't give a shit about non-human animals, and that is...
Yeah, I don't know how much it's worth getting into that because it's... I would just say, like, if you take... in a general assessment of how Efilists talk, how they tend to view the world, how they tend to speak about the world, how they tend to characterize it, it's not unreasonable to characterize that as a philosophically pessimistic view. If you want to use different words like logical or compassion and stuff like this, then I don't have any particular issue with that. But yeah, I would just, it seems to me very reasonable to characterize it as a philosophical pessimistic view.
That's the main difference between the two. We know from several online surveys that the majority of identified antinatalists are actually pro-natalist when it comes to non-humans, in that they spend their money on flesh and other products that come from animal breeding and slavery. So it's not Efilists who are the violent killers, it's the meat-eating antinatalists. They would rather give into their perverse desires than... The reason why Efilists like Amanda have called it antinatalism...
Sorry about that, I was just speeding it up because I've realized like we've been nearly going for 2 hours and we haven't even finished Matt's video yet.
Plus in the past is because it is logical that if procreation and life itself is evil, a negative, a mistake, an aberration, a tragedy, a nightmare, a disaster, something that should not exist, then it makes no sense at all, theoretically, to allow it to continue. As an ethical vegan, it is not enough that I stop eating meat. It is not enough for me to not believe in God as an atheist. Religion and carnism are evil, and if I just let them happen, that would make me evil as well. Passivity or non-action is action. Not doing anything to help someone else is hurting them. Look at what appeasement did for Europe in World War II. It didn't turn out to be a very effective method of preventing suffering. Lawrence did use the word ideology to describe Efilism. It is a philosophy and an ideology, which perhaps separates it from the academic version of antinatalism. It certainly is an ideology with a clear message and goal. Philosophy asks, what is true? While ideology asks, what should we do? Some antinatalists don't really care about the future or non-human suffering, and prefer to simply discuss what is true or false rather than what should be done about the truth. I always saw ethics as a means to an end, not an end unto itself. The knowledge of the truth implies a course of action. To ignore that fact to me would be unethical and illogical. To learn more about Efilism, I would recommend watching videos on channels I will link in the description, all by Mendham, or listen to his interview on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast. It would make sense that the founder of the philosophy should have the final word on what it is. As for this new concept of Efilism,
Yeah, I would just contest that, like, again, I'm maybe speaking from a place of ignorance, but he coined the term Efilism, popularized these sort of general sentient extinctionist views online, but like these views have been around for a while by pretty well established schools of philosophical thought. So yeah, I wouldn't really personally, I wouldn't refer to him as the founder of the philosophy when it's it is just it's a composition of views that have been around for a long time. Coiner of the term, yeah, fine, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. That's getting more into the politics of it, which, you know, it's not really as important to me.
2.0, not created by Mendham, that prioritizes needs over suffering. I may make a video on that later, but for now it seems to be a completely different philosophy. Lawrence barely mentions Mendham in the video, the person who created the word Efilism, which is kind of strange because people often mention Benatar without often mentioning Benatarianism. I feel like they don't want to give credit where credit is due.
Nirvana fallacy. My first critique of Efilism is
we have another
in this world, and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much again, Nadia, for the super chat. Absolute legend from a member as well. Nadia says, oddly, the unplanned proletariat birth strike has zero believable explanations. After ruling out all plausible socioeconomic and biological explanations, several experts preposterously, I can nail that word, float smartphones. So I think what you're saying there, Nadia, is that this general reluctance to have offspring, or this just lack of having as many offspring that we're seeing at the moment, some people are saying that it's to do with smartphones. Yeah, I think that's like you're saying, it's a massive stretch to lay it at the feet of smartphones. Whatever the reason is, it's going to be multifactorial. Like, there are going to be many, many reasons why we're seeing birth rates declining. One of those reasons may be linked to smartphone use. Maybe there is research out there about this. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if in some way, given that smartphones are so pervasive in our lives, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes up that increased smartphone use in some way sort of helps gesture towards lower birth rates. But yeah, it being a significant factor, I'm more skeptical of, but who knows. But yeah, thank you so much for your thoughts, Nadia, and for the support as well.
that I believe it commits the Nirvana fallacy, or the perfect solution fallacy. It presents what is claimed to be a perfect solution to all problems, ending all suffering by ending all life, but one which is completely implausible. Imagine someone devising a whole philosophy around ending global traffic accidents by putting a total ban on the use of vehicles. Yes, this is logically possible, and it would stop all traffic accidents, which are a problem, just like it's logically possible to end all sentient life to stop suffering, which is also a problem, but both solutions are extremely implausible.
This Nirvana fallacy, or in other words, pie in the sky idealism. You could make the same claim about veganism and animal rights activism, that giving animals legal protection is just an unrealistic fantasy because people love eating flesh too much. And
I'm not really sure that's the case. Like, providing legal rights to a group of beings on Earth, which has been done like many times, that seems much more plausible to me than humans collectively agreeing to bring about the extinction of all sentient life. Those two things just seem to be like orders of magnitude different and require extremely different things. Maybe someone could say like you only need a small group of individuals to bring about the extinction of sentient life. Perhaps that's true. With the way technology is going, that might be true. You would also then have like a whole load of people working against them, so I'm not sure if that would actually be successful. And if it was a few people bringing about the extinction of all sentient life, they would presumably have to use such overwhelming force in some sort of technology where it would probably happen in an utterly horrific way. I'm kind of spitballing here because like all of this is extremely hypothetical. Yeah, then you would probably get into the territory of methods that maybe even, Efilis would kind of hesitate at, or some Efilists. But yeah, recognizing certain animals as having rights, which is actually already in the works for, several countries. And actually, there are certain animals that already do have rights in some countries. Compared to causing all sentient life to go extinct, those two things, to me at least, seem extremely like orders of magnitude different in terms of how plausible they are. But maybe causing all sentient life to go extinct is more plausible than I give it credit for. Yeah, so maybe that critique is weaker than I think. I don't know. It seems highly implausible to me, but maybe I'm being ignorant.
we'll never give it up, right? Why do anything then? Why be an activist at all? If we always listen to naysayers, then nobody would ever try to make the world a better place. The vast majority of
I'm not being a naysayer in saying that no one should do anything. Like, I think, in fact, I've, time and time again said people should do stuff. Done a fundraiser on my channel, have another fundraiser next week actually on my channel. So I do think people should do stuff, but do like practical stuff that you can be very sure that you're going to get results from and stuff, rather than just like aiming for some grand universal encompassing total solution that you are just not going to be able to reasonably get anywhere near towards it.
species that have ever existed on Earth are now extinct. 99% of all species that have ever lived have disappeared due to natural extinction events, environmental changes, mass extinctions. I don't buy this argument that extinction is not achievable. Tell that to the Neanderthals and the Triceratops.
Yeah, I mean, that's very different. Just the fact that they are extinct, just the fact that species have naturally gone extinct before doesn't influence how, like, that's not going to change the calculations on how easy it is for humans to intentionally bring about all sentient extinction. In fact, if anything, doesn't it say the opposite? Given the fact that we've had like 5 mass extinction events before, so many species have gone extinct, all of this extinction has happened, and yet we're still here with massive amounts of sentient beings. Doesn't it actually show the opposite? That actually it could actually be hard to do? Because Matt's kind of saying like, look at all this extinction before, it can't be that hard to bring about extinction now. In my head, it kind of shows the opposite. But because of all this extinction has already happened, we've had 5 mass extinction events where like 99% of species, well, maybe not 99, but the vast majority of species went extinct, and yet here we are, and it all came back. That to me shows the opposite, but I don't know.
Of course it's achievable. It's inevitable. All it would take is one person, as imagined in Frank Herbert's novel The White Plague, where a scientist creates a virus that kills only XX chromosome humans on an island. He didn't mean for it to get out of control, but it eventually spreads to the entire world, and then to mammals, and then to other species, consequentially sending the world on the path to extinction.
Playing a role in smaller changes is not going to solve the whole problem of suffering, but it's actually achievable. There are whole organizations out there, established groups of people working on practical means of alleviating suffering. We shouldn't make the perfect the enemy of the good, especially when the perfect seems to be a pipe dream.
Lawrence is basically making the transhumanist argument here. Efilism is not a pipe dream, but transhumanism, or any kind of sci-fi world peace scenario that tries to coexist with the intrinsic suffering of life, is.
My third critique is that this form of utopian thinking can encourage people to commit or support horrific acts. In any realistic scenario, ending all sentient life will involve large amounts of force and violence. Obviously, any person who supports such an endeavor would presumably support the one that minimizes harm, but in reality, it's difficult to identify which means would actually minimize harm. And even then, it's not obvious that we would actually be able to implement that means in practice. We also need to account for human fallibility. Humans can be wrong about the conclusions we draw. We need to be really careful when drawing conclusions that justify enacting significant violence on others.
This is the worst statement in the video to me. No Efilist is saying that the mad scientist from the White Plague should just go ahead and release its female-killing virus without first making a plan to reduce suffering as much as possible. We want a graceful exit, a controlled experiment, not reckless carnage. No one has committed acts of murder because of Efilism.
I'm kind of confused because that's exactly what I said. I feel like Matt has completely misunderstood what I was saying there. I mean, part of my definition of Efilism was that extinction by any means, but preferably by the one that minimizes harm. Which is what he's saying. I think he might have misunderstood what I was saying there. So, hopefully it's not the worst statement in the whole video.
Or antinatalism. You can't call Efilism dangerous while saying that Benatarian antinatalism is benign. They're basically the same thing. I mentioned the Black Panthers earlier.
Yeah, I see them as very different, but yeah, I've gone into that before.
Any violent political protest is on the hands of the protesters, not the books they read. Come on. So we should just shut up, I guess. So someone who writes a sad breakup song should be blamed if someone listens to that.
And we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much again to the legend who sent in that support. I really appreciate it. No message. If you want to send a message via the chat, please do. But thank you so much for the support. Top legend. Matt also just said something which I was going to respond to, but I can't remember what it was.
That breakup song should be blamed if someone... So we should just shut up, I guess.
Oh yeah, this just shut up thing. No, I'm not. Just because I'm saying that this thing that this ideology focuses on, to me, seems to be, much a distraction, isn't me saying sit down, don't do anything. I mean, like I've already said, I want people to actively be doing stuff. And even actually, I even end the video by saying, do stuff. So no, I'm not telling people not to do anything. I'm actually saying, do stuff that you know is going to have and you're well informed to think that you're going to have effective, your actions are going to be effective, donate to charities like Marie Stopes MSI Reproductive Choices. Fucking, I fucked that up, didn't I? Lobby for animals to have rights and all these sorts of things. I'm not saying inaction is the way forward. Syndicate says, really enjoyed your stream so far, but I got to go now. We'll watch it later. Bye, Lawrence. Cheers so much, Syndicate. I appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, this will be available for catch up, obviously, and it's going to be a mega stream. My eyes are actually already beginning to hurt. So I'm actually not sure we're going to get through all of the amendment video. We'll have to see where we are when we finish this map video, but we might have to do a second Efilism stream. We'll see.
So someone who writes a sad breakup song should be blamed if someone listens to that song, gets sad, and kills themselves. 12 years ago, a vegan lifestyle YouTuber went to YouTube headquarters with a gun and fired some shots at the building and then shot herself in the head because Google deleted her channel. Right-wing carnists came out of the woodwork to despicably describe veganism as an extreme violent ideology. In that context, I'm sure Lawrence, who is a vegan YouTuber, would find such arguments to be offensive and...
Yeah, I would say they're wrong to link it to veganism because veganism doesn't commit them to that. But I would also like, I think the same would be about Efilism. Like if someone went and shot up an office in the name of Efilism, like in what way does that further Efilism? Like that's not in any meaning. That in my understanding, that would just be them I mean, if someone did that, they're obviously clearly mentally unwell. So that's probably more to do with it. But they would more just be like using Efilism as a motivation where they probably would have found motivation elsewhere. Or they've just misunderstood what Efilism is saying. In my understanding, Efilism is not saying go and shoot up a school. It's saying violence would be justified to bring about sentient extinction when we know that that's going to further it. Shooting up a school does not do that. So yeah, I don't think I would do the things that Matt is saying that I would probably do.
Ridiculous. So I don't know why one would use that rhetoric against Efilis, while no Efilists have shot up YouTube headquarters. Even if one did, it wouldn't have anything to do with the compassionate philosophy of Efilism. Some people believe that Efilism or antinatalism implies promortalism or urgent suicide. They can believe that if they want, but I don't, and most Efilists don't, because a dead soldier can't fight any battles and is therefore useless. The whole point of my picture I'm drawing here is that we are at war with malevolent morons, reckless killers who bring death and torture into the world. They're sadists, and killing ourselves isn't going to do a damn thing to stop them.
My fourth critique of Efilism is that it has an end goal that seems to be almost impossible to verify. How would you know when sentient extinction has been achieved? Leaving even some life behind could allow the return of the circumstances that Efilism was aiming to eradicate. This again seems like very shaky ground for the justification of violence and ongoing human reproduction. Even if this isn't a flaw in the Efilist ideas, it is a flaw in carrying out Efilism in practice. And whilst the Efilist view can be restricted to just Earth rather than the whole of the universe, which would make this less of an issue to verify, it wouldn't eradicate the issue.
This argument also lacks validity to me because he's saying that plant life may, over 1 billion years, become sentient, and then we have this...
That's not actually what I was saying, because plants, as far as I'm aware, aren't sentient. What I was saying was you can't verify whether you have achieved sentient extinction. Like it's kind of like proving a negative, right? Like to prove that you've brought about sentient extinction, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So if you have an absence of evidence that sentient life exists because you've done something to try and eradicate it, is not evidence of sentient life being absent, right? Like it could be in places that you haven't looked. Like somehow you're not able to detect it. You know, there may be some places you can't reach that it still is. That's what I was saying. Yeah, I wasn't making a point about plant life. I was making a point about you may think that you've eradicated all sentient beings, but there may still be some sentient beings remaining. And like the asteroid coming down, like obviously the asteroid wasn't thinking anything, but the asteroid came down. It didn't eradicate all sentient life. A small amount remained, or some remained. And then it came back, and now it's repopulated the whole world. That's what I was saying.
Same problem again with no humans here to fix it. And this is just ridiculous. It took 4 billion years after life evolved to create neurons. In 1.5 billion years, the Earth's atmosphere is going to be blown off by the sun, and life will be impossible. So this is not something worth worrying about, and this is a straw man argument. There is also no evidence of sentience elsewhere in the universe, so this is again not a valid argument, has no evidence, and if an asteroid hit Earth, it would probably kill all life, sentient or not anyway, so it's not a problem.
Increasing the access to contraception, working towards a world where there are strong legal protections for animals and their property status is abolished, and supporting research into the methods of alleviating the suffering of wild animals, and preventing the potential rise of sentient AI. These seem like more practical and achievable things that are guided by the same motivations.
You know, again, sentient AI is a worthless thing to be concerned about. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah, I mean, if you're of the view that you don't think sentience can arise in AI at some point, then I'm not sure how we could be so sure about that, given that we don't really know how sentience arises or consciousness arises. But if someone has that view, then they could just ignore that part of the video. Like it was a very like small comment in the video.
I can't believe these people accuse Efilists of believing in science fiction concepts like extinction, when extinction is a real thing that has happened in Earth's history. And here they are talking about sentient computer chips. Why should I spend a single calorie worrying about non-existent, non-sentient silicone? I mean,
Yeah, and like if someone's skeptical of that, then that's completely fine, and they don't have to. Like, yeah, there are many other things that people can do to make the world a better place.
it's even more nonsensical than worrying about the suffering of plants. If you understand the importance of logic, then you will be an Efilism. So this was just another Emendum bashing video, unfortunately.
I'm not sure how it was an Emendum bashing video when I didn't even mention Emendum. Which again, I've gone over the reasons why and how if I did it again, I would briefly mention him. But yeah, I don't think it was an Emendum bashing video.
When instead we should be celebrating his contributions to ethics and to antinatalism on YouTube, which is a bigger contribution than anyone else has made by a wide margin. You know, where is the gratitude for the immense body of work and the fact that he paved the way for every other antinatalist on YouTube? Emendum doesn't monetize his content. He doesn't do it for the money. He does it out of goodness and necessity. So that's my response to Lawrence's video. I probably should say a few words about this illustration that you've been watching.
All right, I'm gonna stop it there. Not because, like, please do go and watch the whole video and see what Matt says about his piece of art, because it is a very good piece of art, and I'm not, steering your attention away from it for that reason or anything. It's just he's finished the commentary. Stream's been going for a long time. We need to get on to the next one. So, but thank you, Matt, for making that response. I don't know if Matt will ever see this, but yeah, I appreciate the engagement and the points. Let me get the
Time for another donotguide.com.
Emendum video ready. Okay, so it is ready. Let me switch over. Okay, so just as a reminder, this is not the video that he's uploaded to YouTube. He uploads it to another site. This is 2 hours long, and I am going to put this on 2x speed because from the videos I've seen of him before, he has a tendency to ramble, and I cannot do 2 hours more reaction content on this stream because my eyes are already hurting. So 2x speed, we will it will be an hour then.
In this world, and we raise them to be warriors against evil.
Thank you so much to Bovine Blue Stocking for the donation. Absolute legend. Bovine says, "Hey Lawrence, you're talking a lot of sense, and I'm enjoying the stream so much that I almost forgot about my my positive duty." Good joke. Done. Hope it helps to pay for something else. Thank you so much, Bovine Blue Stocking. Absolute legend. I hope you're enjoying the stream. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream. And I hope you are looking forward to the spiciness that is about to begin. Now, like I said before, I have seen some clips of this. I have not watched it all. The vast majority of this I have not seen. But I have been advised by others that there is a lot of, there is rambling, which is part of the reason why I put it on 2x speed. And also, he isn't that pleasant towards me, which, I kind of expected. So, yeah, there will be that in the video. Very quickly, before we watch it, I'm going to quickly use the bathroom because we have been going for over 2 hours now, and we're probably going to be going for a while later, for a while longer. So I will be right back. And we are back. Okay. Let's get stuck in.
DoNotGuide.com video presentation. Lawrence Anton. So anyway, somebody left a link to this video where he's doing some rag on Efilism and defining it for us, and
Okay, hopefully you guys can hear that while it's at 2 times speed. Let me just check. Okay, yeah, you can. Yeah. Okay.
just I don't watch half of it, but so far it's a big snoozer.
Yeah, he says I'm defining Efilism for them. I think he means Efilists. Yeah, maybe you could frame it like that. I don't know. Like, the reason I put forward my own definition was just because all the definitions I came across, they just had a bunch of fluff in. They didn't seem to really cut to the core. They weren't crisp, all of this sort of stuff. So I just really wanted to present like a crisp, concise definition, the sort that you would be able to put in a dictionary, something like that. I didn't intend for it to be patronizing or anything like that.
Jargon, just never really get to the point, and all in some sort of context where they want to portray the philosophy as too aggressive, and like somehow it's obviously too aggressive. Like, for example, you could say the vegan philosophy.
And another thing I'll say is, because I'm sure he's going to make points that I've already addressed at some point in the video. So if there might be some points he makes which I just gloss over because I feel like I've sort of addressed them already. So yeah, sometimes I will do that. Yeah. And if you haven't seen his videos before, he has a tendency for putting not always fully clothed pictures of himself in the bottom left-hand corner. So I apologize for that if anyone doesn't like that, but
is basically saying that you're running concentration camps. I mean, we had a whole World War II over this kind of stuff. That you don't let bad people do these kind of things. You could argue that having a kid is just giving birth to a slave. You're just going to first enslave them to the natural rules, the facts of life on Earth, plus the facts of some silly family traditions and bullshit that you're going to be imposing. And it's just slavery. We had a civil war to stop that. So again, it's this idiotic notion that somehow they prefer it that way now. But the cause is worth it. So again, if it's a real challenge for somebody who is vegan, and actually believes that you're living among a bunch of moral criminals, ethical criminals. Let's just say criminals, and then we don't have to worry about ethical or moral. Yeah, I wish they.
Matthew was just put in the chat saying Paul Joseph Watson just released a video, 37 minutes, denigrating antinatalism. The parcel is here. I'll be right back. Thank you. Apologies for that. Now the parcel is here, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah, Matthew, if you have a link to that, can you maybe email it to me or say what the name of the video is? Because I just looked on his channel and I don't see a video he's posted 37 minutes ago. So yeah, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, because the last video he released on his channel was a day ago. Cool. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's continue.
Could do that. And that you definitely have a duty to do something. And so what lines are you going to draw, in terms of your rescue mission? I mean, are you really going to make the argument that you're going to go on a rescue mission under these tiny little narrow conditions and then it's legitimate? So, it's not that simple a question about whether our civilization has any merit at all and whether we have a real obligation to rescue victims. And that, realistically, 50 million people died in World War II to save, a couple million. Not exactly well-apportioned miseries and harms and all of that stuff. But is the cause worth it or not? So, this guy basically is arguing that he wouldn't do anything because everything can be considered an act of aggression. And
yeah, I feel like somewhat similar mistake that to what Matt made. So I wasn't saying don't do anything. Yeah, I feel like it's clear now. I've kind of explained it already. I wasn't saying do nothing. There are many things I think we can do. I was just making a specific critique about Efilism. But no, I'm not saying we should just kick back and let the world carry on turning as it is.
my simple counter argument is that once you've defined appropriate
And like I said, I don't think all use of force. I'm not saying use of force in and of itself is bad. Well, I'm not saying it can never be justified. Let's put it like that.
as imposers, you have a right to impose on imposers. Okay, you have a right to stop rapists, and you have a right to stop slave owners, and you have a right to, fight against these things. Do you want to fight? No. I mean, there's anything about the philosophy that says, we would prefer to have a war over it. No, we'd like a nice negotiated solution. And that's the irony of this conversation, frankly. I mean, the fact is that the pessimistic view is winning worldwide, okay? Most cultures, outside of pollution by third world shit, are doing just fine in figuring out that there's better things to do than kid farming. They found something to entertain themselves, and they're no longer completely dependent on kid farming, okay, as the big entertainment. So it's just an absolute fact that, as long as those ratios of children born who decide, I don't really want to be a papa or a mama, then we're going extinct. So, if those cultures could dominate. And so the only real problem is third world shit, and that's just the fact. If we could stop the third world shit from, infesting the civilized world, then we could solve the problem. So they would rather we be...
I'm not entirely sure what he's going about in terms of third world shit, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure what he's going on about.
Come the third world. They'd rather we destroy all civilization, okay, to preserve the dignity of ignorant squalor. Yeah, something like that. So it's just so fucking stupid. So anyway, this I'll jump through some of the first half of this crap, and it's just crap. I really have to find where he actually has a little bit of written crap, but it's just crap. All right, so let's just understand the word Efilism, I invented, right? So if you're going to talk about the definition, you should talk about the person who created the word. Now, lots of people were Efilist in history. Lots of people had contempt for the whole structure of nature. They looked at it and saw the tooth and, red with tooth and claw kind of thing. That it's a bloodbath. And all for the knot of, you become semi-functional and it's time to annihilate you. So yes, it's all for nothing. Becoming functional and aware and educated and wise. Nature hates wisdom in a way. So I'll just play some of this video. But I mean, look, I invented the word, right, Efilism, really to say it's not antinatalism. So antinatalism included all this woo shit about people who hated civilization, right? People wrote whole books about, civilization. They're just anti-civilizationists. They like nature. They think nature's just fine. So hardly somebody I would consider on my side, okay? They just want to get rid of humans. Just getting rid of humans isn't going to solve anything on this planet. It's not going to solve the suffering problem and the imposition problem. Any substance of the problem isn't going to be solved. The human condition is a tiny percentage of the condition of sentience on planet Earth. And so that's not a solution. And then the rest are, they all have agenda that is completely opposed to each other. So it's like having an ally that you'll eventually have to go to war with. It just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I always find it odd when people level this critique at antinatalism like it's not a solution. Like, it doesn't... Like, that's not... In my understanding, that's not the intention behind it. That's like saying, oh, well, people who are hard of seeing and hearing wearing glasses and hearing aids, well, that's not a solution. Well, yeah, it's an appropriate response to the situation they're in, or like antinatalism, it's an appropriate response to the act they're considering, procreation. But it doesn't posit itself as solving all things. Like, if you're trying to solve all things, that would just be part of the solution, right? Yeah, I don't know.
To give guns to Osama bin Laden. Okay, it's no point in having an ally who is against everything you believe in. So that's why I made the distinction that I'm not an ambiguous or erroneously defined antinatalist. I have a very specific understanding of the root problem, which is evolution itself. This is just chemistry run amok. Lots of ways you can describe, meat grinder, just to propagate a DNA molecule, because the DNA molecule is trying to take territory, and that's all this is about. And it's not a good enough reason to torture things. Propagating DNA molecules just isn't worth it. All right. We're not fixing some sickness the universe has. So we're non-essential nonsense, and we're very expensive non-essential nonsense. That's the whole point. The expense is child murder, frankly. So if you're an Efilist, you're trying to prevent children from being raped, essentially molested and killed, because that's what parents are doing to their kids. They're enslaving them to bullshit and then killing them. And you're saying, oh yeah, I'd like to stop that. Yeah, that's the ambition. All right, so fuck this place. These people are so full of shit. Anyway, play the beginning.
Efilism. You might have heard of it before, but you might.
This asshole, like half his videos have the word in them somewhere. So he's pretending he's making a video where we never heard the word. I mean,
How far are we in? 9 minutes in, and I've been called an asshole.
the whole icon thing, the whole clickbait bullshit. I mean, this is all just for the show. No, there's no go here. There's no give a damn about the truth. It's just these people just want to be YouTube celebrities.
I not really understand what it is. It's a topic steeped in controversy. The idea
Is it? I don't know. Like compared to what? The whole world is covered in controversy. You don't think the whole world is in radical controversy? It's never been more controversial in the sense that it's all kinds of black and white subjects out there. So yes, it's no big surprise that this is a challenge to the traditional religious fables of life. Yes, that's right. But what would be the point of talking about something that wasn't controversial? So you'd almost argue that if it wasn't controversial, then we'd already be fixing it. So even that's redundant mush.
is the implications, and the associated people have fueled debates and infighting. In this video, I'm going to be
So whatever that is, I don't have any infighting, frankly. I've never had any infighting with myself. So, it's always been pretty clear to me.
as a sentient being. In the early period of the universe, it was ultimately benign, and in
Okay, so you could argue that it's benign, except that it had this cancer cell that was going to grow. So yes, it's benign in its function, current function, but it had this nasty potential.
Yeah, that's what I meant. As in, it was benign as it was then, but yeah, obviously things could have metastasized, should we say?
To get out of control and start making feeling things. All right, let's jump ahead a little.
So that the fittest can go on to reproduce.
Right, so this is some of the simple arguments that are fine. Throw those in there. I'd say that's essential to understanding, being an anti-life person is understanding that life is a biological function. Okay, it's physics, chemistry, then biology. And, that's the essence of it. And it's just not sufficiently functional enough as a manifestation of the evolution of chemistry. It's a dysfunctional hunk of chemistry in the sense that it wastes more suffering than it produces something of value, some kind of bliss or something. Way too little of that, way too much of the other. Way too expensive. It's just that simple. And the currency is suffering.
To all sorts of things that lead to a basic dynamic of never-ending desire. A few examples being sex, food, people, attention.
Right, so we're...
Just to Matthew and Bert in the chat, I think I found the video. Is it the one called "I'm Sick of Hearing It"? I've saved it to my watch later. See what he's saying, and if there's anything worth responding to, I'll do a response. I have responded to one of Paul Joseph Watchen's videos before.
We're talking about crap. He's talking crap about crap. So he actually does, things I've invented, and but there's no reference to any of this conversation about this word and its definition and me, which seems petty, incredibly petty. So yes, the crap acronym, consumption, reproduction, parasitism. Addiction, parasitism, and so the addiction part is that we're constantly struggling for our satisfaction to stay out of trouble, and so we're bobbing in the quicksand. And we have to keep struggling to maintain our condition. And you can take that metaphor to all kinds of aspects of our civilization, even in the sense that people have to pay this huge price of going to work, and being enslaved. And that's when you're getting pushed under the quicksand, and you have to gasp and gasp. And then you get to have your, a little bit of free time here and there, and a little bit of pleasure or whatever it is, complete relief, let's just say, from burden. But most of life is, licking your wounds, so to speak.
What I've just thought is I'm actually going to change where I am. So I'm going to put myself here, because then I'm not blocking him.
Oh, that's fuck.
Oh dear. Okay. Is there any way I can skip forward through?
Pathetic, frankly.
I feel like he's just going to be going on about me there. Get past the...
Continuing.
Force, which is close to what I believe Efilism to be, but for reasons that we'll get onto later, I find kind of incoherent. So
So if you find it incoherent, if you're an Efilist and say, okay, life is sucked, it's garbage, and but you can only get rid of it through negotiation. You don't negotiate with Hitler, you can't kill Hitler. That kind of argument, and that's fine. It's in my opinion, okay, it's you're probably being unrealistic to think that you can come up with a perfect, graceful exit, and that's all this is sort of about, right? There's this idea that you're going to do this mercy killing thing, and you're the only hope. So there's somebody in this bad condition, and it's basically you're, the decider. And the fact is, though, the decision isn't going to be, you're not going to be allowed to at any 1 second pull the plug. Let's get the last little good thought he has, and then we'll pull the plug. The idea is that the plug is just going to show up in maybe this form or this form or this form, and the fact is, it might never show up again. You might never have a chance to hit the switch. And so if the switch shows up, you're going to say, okay, I can give up this 45 seconds. It's going to live longer. how much are you willing to sacrifice? And that's all it's really, the fact is the end is so much better than the horrible outcome that would exist. And it's back to a Yodeism. There's do and do not do. There is no try. So yeah, you might want to try to do it in this perfect way. But the fact is if you're given the opportunity to get it done, you have to get it done. That's the important part. If you don't get the do done, okay, that's the big failure, because it's all on you. We're assuming you have no reason to believe there's any other hope but you. Okay, so you have to have your boots on and be ready. All right.
So I'd link that in the description below. But in my view, if someone speaks about Efilism in these terms, they just aren't talking about Efilism.
So again, what is this distinction? So if they talk about in terms of, well, I can imagine that we could invent a piece of nanotechnology that would sterilize all biological life, because it's all based on the same cells, and all the cells have some common stuff, mitochondria, this, that, all these simple rules, and that it would be factually conceivable that you could create perfect sterilization. Now, do we need to? So the argument would be is right now we manage wildlife populations to prevent them from getting out of control and causing a lot of horrible harm. And the fact is we're doing it poorly in a lot of places like New Jersey with deers and other places because people say don't shoot deer. Well, the fact is if you don't manage the population, the outcome is so much worse. And so we're going to call the management of wildlife populations unethical. So we should let the buffalo go back to having herds that are 2 million strong. We should just let them run through LA. What's the solution? I mean, it's just idiotic to say there's any part of this that doesn't require imposition. Your existence.
Yeah, again, I'm not saying no use of force is justified in any circumstance. Like I do think there are certain ways that we should intervene in animal populations and help regulate their populations through the use of contraception. Like there's very promising potential stuff happening with contraceptive use in the regulation of rat and pigeon populations, because at the moment they're just killed, via poison or trapping and stuff like this. That is, sure, it's less of a use of force, but it's maintaining use of force against animals in, a way which I believe is justified. It's going to secure their, it's going to prevent a lot of harm happening. It's going to reduce violence, this sort of stuff. And it seems very plausible. Now, maybe Amendum would say, well, yeah, causing sentient extinction is going to reduce violence. In the long run, if you can achieve it, but it seems, very implausible that you could achieve it. And that's a much more large scale and widespread thing you'd have to do. And the use of force is going to be orders of magnitude more. And it's going to be a lot less clear whether that's going to actually be productive. At least how I see it now. Maybe we'll be in a there are going to be technologies we'll invent which I just have no knowledge of now. So the situation in maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years time is going to be completely different. So maybe the things I'm saying now are gonna be completely invalid. But this is just how I assess Efilism at present.
It's an imposition. You're using energy right now, a lot of it. And if you weren't using it, some other organism could be using it. Some other thing could be using it. So you've imposed their non-existence through your own existence. So this whole conversation about how I can't possibly, like there's some kind of, the Buddhists, whatever they're called, the Jains, not stepping on bugs and doing all so they're not breathing air. It's taking things to a ludicrous extreme. So, I mean, how ludicrous is the extreme? That's the argument. How silly are you going to be? So we're living in a bloodbath right now. So all these animals incarcerated in concentration camps, tormented, tortured, medical experiments, all kinds of horrors, and then brutally killed. That's okay. Yeah, that's not unethical. Oh, okay. What bullshit conversation this is.
Obviously, for the record, I didn't say any of that.
The Efilism can, in some cases, be extended to all life, including non-sentient life, but I'm not going to cover that here.
No, I don't know why it can be. So I invented the word just to eliminate the possibility of such a ludicrous statement, okay, that somehow there's some part of the universe that we have to stop except the part that becomes sentient. So if it's benign mechanical chemistry that has no capacity to build a neuron, for example, or to evolve into one, yes, that's not included. That's not a problem.
I don't feel it's really necessary. And if you believe that...
It's not like you have to turn everything back into hydrogen. You can still have the other elements. It's too ridiculous. Jump ahead a little bit. That's just
like I said in the video, you could restrict it to Earth or encompass the whole of the universe.
too ridiculous.
It contains a moral duty for humans to bring about.
So why say moral duty? Just say duty. Okay. Just say you have a rational obligation to act because you know what torture is. You've experienced. You know it's bad, and you need to stop it wherever it exists because you're smart enough to know that torture in your brain is just as real as torture in another brain. And so if I'm going to use my gun to defend my home, if I'm going to use violence to stop somebody from harming me, why the fuck isn't it okay to use violence to stop them from harming my neighbor? What the fuck's the difference there, brilliant man? How the fuck do you make a rational distinction and tell me that it's okay to defend my life, quote unquote, my welfare, but it's not okay to protect something else's welfare? And that's supposed to be a rational statement that somehow it's obviously wrong? No, it's not obviously wrong for me to go on a rescue mission. Now, the pragmatic problem is that, yes, it's not constructive. Okay, so right now, I think it's morally right, okay, to break into the animal concentration camps and euthanize the poor critters that are being brutalized. I think people would have every right because they're fighting a wrong. But we know that pragmatically, they're not going to win that war. So you don't fight a war you know you're going to lose, because that puts your people in a worse condition. If you have the revolution too soon and you can't win the revolution, then all you do is harm yourself. But there's no doubt about the rightness of the cause, frankly. There's no amount of philosophical jargon anywhere that creates any contest to the legitimacy of the statement that having kids is imposing. There's no way to unravel that into some other statement than besides, yes, it's a kind of slavery.
Other species are being produced, or at least not enough to replace the existing members who are.
Right, so we're already there, right? So again, the civilized world is already there. We've already won. Okay, we're doing the graceful exit for the humanity part. And the only part that would have to be cleaned up in the end is, yes, you have to leave a few humans behind to
I mean, let's see the rest of the stuff he's saying, but I feel like it's just going into wishful thinking.
create the infrastructure necessary to create your doomsday, let's get rid of it all button in a millisecond.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's any evidence to support the view that we are on our way to Efilism. The decline in birth rates at the moment have like nothing to do with pursuing sentient extinction or even really a concern about the welfare of humans. I mean, maybe there is an element of like, some people are hesitant about procreation because of climate change or geopolitics and stuff like this. There is that element, but in my understanding of the polls that have been done, that is it's not a majority. I might be wrong on that, but even if I am wrong on that, that still doesn't mean that people are, motivated towards some sort of Efilist view. Birth rates are decreasing, but yeah, we're not. I don't think it's reasonable to assume we're on the road to human extinction. We are likely on the road to a smaller population, but a smaller population that's going to pursue some sort of red button or technology that he was talking about. I feel like that's just like wild wishful thinking and optimism.
Any means necessary, provided that means.
So again, any means necessary that mean that you've rescued more than you imprisoned. So again, the game is always just about this unpleasant circumstance where you're not going to, the rescue mission puts the rescuers at risk. There's no free lunch here. You don't defeat Hitler for free. It costs you something. Nothing is free. So you're saying, okay, the only solution that's viable is a free solution. Well, there's probably not going to be a free solution. I'll hope for it. I'll wish for it. But I'm not going to be stupid enough to think, well, that's the only possible right answer. No, the right answer is if I do anything to prevent more than I cause, I won. So that's all that matters. This is about how much blood is on your shoes. All right? And if I can.
Sometimes I'm not going to have substantive stuff to say to what he's saying, because sometimes I either don't really know what he's talking about. It seems to just sort of go in all sorts of directions, or he's gone off on like a massive tangent where he's not actually addressing what I've said.
Step this way and I'm going to have less blood on my shoes because I've rescued the people. I saved the day. But it costs some. Well, yeah, but that's the only question is, did I succeed? And yes, it would be better to succeed with a huge profit than a tiny profit. So yeah, you want to always try to maximize your profit. So minimize the losses, make it as inexpensive and as harsh as possible. And there's no Efilist who's not advocating for that. So again, this is just such a bullshit pigeonhole nonsense to say there's some emotional need to smite the human race or to smite living things. Bullshit. It's just accepting your obligations as a rescuer, that it's not going to be fun. I mean, if I had to go out and cull animals, I could do it. I wouldn't like it, I might vomit, but I could do it because I can understand the necessity of it. You fuck.
Components of Efilism explicit. So for Efilism with force?
So the only thing that changes here.
I'm not sure what's going on right now.
So this is the view he thinks is Efilism. So first it starts with this jargon, okay? The view that existence is a net negative. So life. That's why it's life spelled backwards. Yes, the existence of life is a net negative in the sense that so much more torment and torture is created, and it's torture that is imposed. Nobody volunteers to be a consciousness, and that's just a fact. There's no consent. And it doesn't matter that you can't get consent. The fact is there is no consent, and you just can't do that. That's the imposition. So the imposition, the crime, has been committed by the ignorant process that doesn't care about decency and ethics. Okay, nature doesn't care. That's breaking the rules. All right, negative, and that it would be better if no sentient life existed. So this is just better never to have been, which is a meaningless statement if you're not going to do anything about it. So yes, you can philosophically say, oh, it'd be better if life didn't exist. So let's just carry on. Yes, it'd be better, but that's it. I'm not going to make it any better. I'll make sure better never happens because I'll make silly arguments about how making better happen is evil. Yeah, that's evil. Okay. The view is that humans have a moral duty. So again, why put this morality word in here? It just makes it sound like religion, all right? And so you could just say an ethical duty, and you could just say a rational, a reasonable duty, a reasonably perceivable duty. You could just say a duty to bring about sentient extinction.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a very minor point. I'm not sure why he's picking up on this, but the reason I put moral in there is because there are other forms of duty that it isn't, right? Like, it's not a legal duty, but there are such things as legal duty. So I specified that it was a moral one.
Yes, to prevent an unnecessarily brutal future. So the future doesn't need to exist. There's nothing we're going to accomplish that needs to happen. None of that's in the cards, and Earth should be Mars. All right, so then he does a subcategory to the number 2, so that somehow this is about our duty, okay? The view that it is permissible, so again, he uses morally, there's no point. It is permissible to bring about sentient extinction by any means necessary. So I don't even know what that means, right? Necessary completing the task. So again, your obligation is to reform, to fix. So your obligation that you broke less in your process of fixing, you didn't break more stuff than you fixed. You didn't spill more blood than you cleaned up. That's the word necessary. So the only obligation is for you to complete the do project, which is prevent more torture. So if you just look at it as what action produces less torture in the future, that's all you have to complete is that task. But preferably via those that are expected to minimize harm. Yeah. So with the understanding, okay, that the cleaner the method, the...
So he hasn't fully finished what he's saying. And I was listening to his response to each of those parts. And he actually didn't... There were some points when he huffed and puffed, but actually he didn't really disagree with any of that. So it's kind of funny how at the start of the video he was like, oh, he's going to define Efilism to us, right? And kind of dismissing it, maybe, and he's kind of been insinuating I don't understand it. But then when the definition of Efilism I'm actually presenting, he's gone through point by point and agreed with it all. Does this not seem like a sort of contrast or contradiction to you? Like, I can't define Efilism for Efilists, and I don't understand Efilism. But when I present my definition of Efilism, he agrees with it, and it seems to capture the necessary parts of Efilism. Like, does that not feel strange to other people?
Maximum profit. So yes, it's better to do it clean than dirty. It could be that simple a statement. Efficient rather than inefficient in producing harm.
Maybe he will point out extra elements of Efilism that I've missed out. So that is a possibility. Maybe he's done that. Maybe he's going to do that. Let's see.
So you just want to maximize the efficiency of your solution. Yes, of course. But the point is you have to have the solution. Missing the opportunity to create a solution is a bigger crime than, spilling a couple of drops of blood to prevent the ocean of blood. Just a fact, in my opinion. I mean, it's just a fact. If you squandered the opportunity to dry the ocean, because you were worried that you weren't going to get all of it or some other kind of bullshit, you've lost your opportunity and you've destroyed any productive hope. If you're going to worry about all of this minutia over magnitudes of order of efficiency, I mean, you're talking about a tiny percentage of your efficiency is diminished. If you consider how much is at stake, how many decades or millennia there could be in the future of sentient life suffering on Earth, even if I stuck a nail in the eye of every living thing today to prevent that, I'd probably still be running a huge profit. Just a fact. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just saying that there's not much, that there's no imaginable bad way I could press the button that would be worse than letting the future happen the way it is slated to happen. It would be ridiculous of me to think, oh.
I feel like there is. Because there is a level of harm that is going to happen in the future. So if you accept that level of harm or more, or even a level of harm approaching that, on some views, then, I don't know. I feel like that would be wrong even under his view.
It's just a marginal profit. Yeah, that's a ridiculously silly thing for me to think. All right, so what is this crap? Efilism, the view that existence is a net negative, so it keeps saying no sentient life in the universe, and humans have a moral duty to bring about sentient extinction by any means necessary. So again, that's why bother saying any means necessary when you're qualifying it by the understanding that the any means, what do you mean by any means? Let's take 1 billion years and stick nails in everything's eye. No, let's not do that. So any means is retarded.
Yeah, that's why I say by any means necessary, but preferably via those that are expected to minimize harm. So if the way that is expected to minimize harm is the way that he just said, then presumably that's the most preferable way to do it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's unfair is what it is. It's a silly thing to say. Because of course the means are important. The means to an end are always important. And the means can't be worse than the end you're preventing. Duh. oh god, these people are just so, just stupid.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's just completely misunderstood what my definition says. But...
Playing games with concepts and words. That's all it is. 24 so fuck this. All right, I guess I should have downloaded the piece of crap. All right, back. So Marie Holt. So this is kind of good stuff, but it's not any better than say it's even less of a story about evolution and the biology and all the reasoning to understand how this conscious experience is just to make a machine that's just the game is just this idea of consuming to reproduce, to preserve a DNA molecule, and that in most circumstances that means you're going to have to kill a lot of children to do this improving thing to make you a better gladiator. And so that's not the whole narrative. And so most of what you wrote is kind of poetic little. I mean, it's nice statements, but again, you can't make the argument out of a bunch of little statements saying "I hate you." You've got to explain why you hate.
And I highly encourage anyone to check it out. She was a feminist and animal rights activist, an antinatalist, and more. In a speech she gave in 1982,
clearly she was an extinctionist. Clearly, so yes, you could be an extinctionist and an Efilism. Not a problem.
Marie said the following.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure what he's trying to say there, because Efilism is a form of extinctionism. So you wouldn't be an extinctionist and an Efilist. You would, like, being an Efilist is being an extinctionist. It's not sort of and, it just... That is part of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking. I don't know.
Obviously, the world will come to an end sooner or later, and I, for one, have no problem with that. I do not even mind glimpsing into the mists of eternity and seeing the earth finally purged of its human microbes, left to the wild flora and fauna, awaiting the blessed day when it is stripped of this last instance of life. And
so why do the humans first and then the animals will somehow eventually die maybe a billion years later? I mean, that's not a solution, frankly. It's not the best solution. So obviously, humans have the capacity, we have the power. We're the bus driver. We got to take responsibility for where the bus goes. Blah 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 blah.
then in an interview later done with Jacques Maul in La Science Française, she expresses what is even more an Efilism.
I know. So what's the point of expressing the view? The point isn't explaining the view. The whole point is to make the argument so you don't have to impose on anybody. You can get them to voluntarily recognize it's not a great idea to be an asshole, and that's doing Efilism the right way.
I'm not about.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if that is doing Efilism the right way, then there is no right way of doing Efilism, because you're not going to convince everyone to do that. And even if you do convince everyone you can convince, there are many, many sentient beings on this planet, in fact, the majority, which are not open to rational engagement, like non-human animals, right? Like, these are not beings that you can convince to not reproduce or end their lives or whatever you want them to do.
A person, but if one day I had the means to blow up the whole universe and myself with it, well, that day I'd be a criminal. Edward?
Right, if I had the capacity to do it in some, if I had to actually endure some kind of great horror, that is, I had to, for 1,000 years, be tormented and tortured, have a nail pulled in and out of my eye, I'd have to agree to it. That's how much I'm certain, for the value of the outcome. So the amount of prevention is so great that I would endure thousands, even 1,000,000 years of me personally being tortured. I would sign a contract because I know it would be for the best, period.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very admirable of him. Whether that would be someone's duty to do, I'm not sure of that, especially in reality. Like, just because you sign a contract doesn't mean it's actually guaranteed to happen. So you're signing yourself up to this whole world of torture for years and years and years and years and years. Like, you're not really going to be able to guarantee that that's actually going to produce the outcome that you're signing up for. So I feel like in practice it's even harder to maintain that would be a duty that someone would have, because you can't actually guarantee to them that the extraordinary level of harm they're taking on is actually going to lead to the thing that you're claiming it is.
So in a way, I would argue that's a more compelling statement, in the sense that I'm a coward at heart, and I know it. So I know it with such a high level of confidence that even I can't concede to my own cowardice, and I would say, okay, impose it on me. I'll have to do it. Yuck. I mean, that's how bad the circumstance is. Shithead. Anyway, so let's just play this last bit.
Hartman is another example. He was a disciple of Arthur Schopenhauer. Hartman thought that human extinction would perpetuate the misery of existence by leaving other animals and maybe even other life forms in other parts of the universe to continue.
So this other parts of the universe is just silly stuff, because if you know anything about the physics, you can't do anything about that, except maybe robotically, and there's no law against it. I'm not opposed to any of that, but you don't forgo the rescue mission because there's other people to rescue, kind of thing. Some imaginary people on another railroad track. You can save this one. That one, who knows? You have to invest in where it's pragmatic and practical.
Ad absurdum to negative utilitarianism. In his paper Negative Utilitarianism, Smart says this: suppose that a ruler controls a weapon capable of instantly and painlessly destroying the human race. Consequently, the use of the weapon is bound to diminish suffering and would be the ruler's duty on negative utilitarian grounds. Would not our benevolent world exploiter be truly the savior of mankind, and for that matter of the animals too? And
so there's nothing wrong with thought experiments, but I'm just saying you have to do the thoughting. You have to think through it and say, well, what would I do if it's on me? I mean, if I'm the only hope, Am I going to be, am I going to procrastinate? I don't think so. Oh my gosh, fuck this. What does it make, $5? Shit. Yeah.
Point of antinatalism.
To be fair, I don't I just turn monetization on. I don't actually fiddle around with how many adverts there are. So I'm not actually sure how many adverts play. If people think there are too many adverts, then let me know via email. But yeah, this is not something I sort of intentionally go and meddle with.
Or the non-speciesist version of antinatalism. The way I see it, though, these two ideas
The non-speciesist version.
seem to have more differences than they do similarities.
So he was talking about, what was he comparing? Oh, fuck.
Antinatalism is the view that it is morally wrong to create new sentient beings, or some people restrict it to human beings. I've heard Efilism described as antinatalism upgraded, or the logical endpoint of antinatalism.
No, a rational description of antinatalism versus irrational, mushy statements about why you would be antinatalist. The only reason you would be antinatalist is because you know it's futile. This is a zero-sum game, and we're playing the zero-sum game at a huge deficit. So there's nothing to sacrifice by giving up on the hopeless task of, it's like having a slot machine that can never give you any money back. Yeah, well, you don't play, so you break it. Oh, no. But anyway.
Or the non-speciesist version of antinatalism. The way I see it, though...
Right, so again, this whole idea of talking about natalism in some kind of human context is so ignorant, frankly. I mean, it's like vacuously stupid to separate us from animals. We are animals. We came from nature. We're only a few thousand years separated, essentially, from being an animal. I mean, 40,000 years ago, come on. There wasn't much going on in terms of human behavior that had anything to do with civilization.
These two ideas seem to have more differences than they do similarities.
Whatever. Obviously, there's the idea of being antinatalist for any reason, okay, and being Efilist for one reason, is because you know that life is futile and functionless and very expensive.
First, I'm going to look at their differences, and then I'm going to cover their similarities. And I want to make clear in this section, I'm not necessarily judging which of these views is better. I'm just simply laying out the conceptual
Oh, fuck you. Yeah, like I could give a shit what you're doing. You understand a concept somewhere? You don't understand that the word moral isn't necessary.
I don't want to comment too much on the personal stuff, but I just don't understand if it pains him this much to watch it. I don't understand why he spends 2 hours watching my video and then re-watching it with the reaction he does to himself. Yeah, I don't know.
Differences between the two, and then the conceptual similarities. Sentientism. The first difference between Efilism and antinatalism is the scope of who is included in the views, although it is a bit complicated here. I'm a sentiocentric antinatalist, but
I don't even know why people would call themselves something queer. Frankly, I'm batshit silly crazy. Centriocentric. I mean, who came up with this crap? Oh, fuck. Why don't you do a show on that?
Why the hate for that word? I don't understand.
Where did the term centriocentric and bullshit come from? Who invented that shit?
I recognise that there are many antinatalists that take an anthropocentric view, and whilst I disagree with these people, and I've gone over the reasons why in other videos, I recognise that anthropocentric antinatalism is at least conceivable conceptually. Efilism, on the other hand, can only be conceived of as a sentiocentric view. It wouldn't make sense for Efilism to be anthropocentric. I'm not even sure.
I don't even understand how anybody could believe there's some necessity to correct it when there's no problem. So how could there ever be a problem if it isn't about a sentient organism? Because what would the fucking problem be? If it's not sentient, how could it have a fucking problem? Shit, calculators cannot have a problem. I mean, my computer cannot have any problems. Nothing. Mechanical things that aren't sentient and aren't conscious cannot have problems.
That would mean. So this is a relatively clear conceptual difference between anthropocentric antinatalism and Efilism. But what about sentiocentric antinatalism? Well, like I said, I view antinatalism as sentiocentric, so going forward in the video when I reference antinatalism, I'm going to mean sentiocentric antinatalism. And to explore the differences between that and Efilism, let's move on to the next ones. Pronatalism and ethical duties. The second...
Whatever. Pro-natalism? Again, that's pro-slavery, so we already know that, well, that's easy to be against. Oh, shit.
The difference is the ethical duties attributed to us under antinatalism and Efilism. Antinatalism attributes a negative duty to individuals, the duty not to create other sentient beings.
So again, that's like saying a duty not to rape, but you don't have any duty to stop rapists. It doesn't make any sense. So it's such a logical flaw if you don't recognize that your experience is the same as all the other experiences, essentially the same, component-wise the same. Torture is torture is torture is torture, and pretend your torture is special is just retarded, frankly. So how can the game be any other game then? The enemy is the broken leg. The enemy isn't my broken leg.
Explore the boundaries of this duty in another video, should antinatalists be vegan.
Oh, he just keeps promoting his own shit.
Again, that's linked in the description. Efilists seem to generally support this duty, but it's potentially in conflict with what Efilism prescribes.
So it's just kind of funny, right? There's no link in the description to the person who
I don't know. I'm not going to get it.
Coined the phrase that you're using to describe the philosophy. Hilarious.
I've said, Efilism attributes a collective positive duty to humanity, the duty to bring about sentient extinction. If humanity's continued existence increases the likelihood of...
I mean, you could just reverse it. You could say the duty is not to be a slave owner. It's not our duty to stop you. It's your duty to stop yourself from being a criminal. So, they're the ones committing the crime. It's not, judging me is the silly part. You should be judging the perpetrator.
Bringing about sentient extinction, it could be argued that Efilism wouldn't support this individual negative duty, not to create at least human beings.
I don't know why Efilism wouldn't be against any creation, period. It's not needed. We have enough humans to do the job now. Let's do the job and be done with it.
Or to stand in the way of someone else who is creating human beings. This reminds me of something I recently read in David Benatar's new book, Very Practical Ethics. In it, he examines the individual duties we may have with respect to global warming. He posits two minimal duties that are plausibly within everyone's ability to fulfill. The first is a negative duty not to stand in the way of changes that would minimize or counter global warming. The second...
again, so, a subject for which I don't think Benatar's an expert, so how does he know whether there's any practical use to trying to prevent it? It's already going to happen, and it might be a lot more pragmatic to just accept that we're going back to the Jurassic, and we'll have to live a little different. The planet will be overall warmer, so what? Live with it, because you're not going to be able to stop it.
is a minimal positive duty to vote for proposals.
I'm so confused. He's criticizing Benatar for talking about climate change because Benatar isn't an expert, and then he makes recommendations about climate change. He's not an expert. I'm so confused. I'm so confused.
That would minimize or counter global warming. Perhaps similar duties could apply to individuals under Efilism with regards to the continuation of humanity, if it would increase the likelihood of sentient extinction.
Whatever. You can't even. What the hell? You just said blah, 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 blah. This is like listening to Charlie Brown's mother. Blah, 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 blah.
Individuals might have a negative duty not to obstruct the continuation of humanity, and a minimal positive duty to support actions that ensure it. But again,
I wonder how many jump cuts there are in this video. I mean, if somebody could actually count the amount of times he cut the video. So he's just reading this shit and cut. I mean, I can't imagine the editing process.
none of this is particularly.
I will agree with him there. The editing process for some videos is brutal. So we found some alignment.
Clear. There doesn't seem to be any
It's
coherent
like every sentence, frankly. Cut.
or even exploratory framework for individual duties under Efilism. Not that I've seen anyway. There are vaguely analogous issues in antinatalism that have been subject to scrutiny and discussion.
It's just, whatever. Fine, it's all this performance art crap. Yes, the audience is so fucking dumb, that this is what you have to do. You have to speed it up and cut everything out, and because
It's, I mean, it's not about the audience being dumb. It's just about concisely putting across, like, what you're trying to say and take out fluff. Yeah, I don't know. My conversation videos I have with people, like, those are very minimally edited, or at least they don't have these jump cuts if people prefer that. But yeah,
they really don't want to have a conversation about what it is to be alive. It's not a subject they're interested in.
Like in chapter 6 of David Benatar's book, Bad Enough to Have Been, he discusses the permissibility of limited reproduction in the context of a phased extinction. I won't go into the exploration here. The point I'm simply trying to make is that it's something that has at least been subject to examination and exploration in
Yeah. So if I'm just saying, so vegans, if they were 80% of the population was vegan, you don't think they would pass laws against eating meat or farming animals? Of course they would. Be perfectly rational. I mean, it's just such a bullshit argument.
I'm not sure how that's relevant to the point I'm making. Maybe I'm missing which part of the video we're in, but
If they were 80% of the population was vegan, you don't think they would pass laws?
framework for individual duties under Efilism. Not that I've seen anyway.
yeah, I mean, here I'm talking about the conflict between a collective duty and individual duties.
There are vaguely analogous issues in antinatalism that have been subject to scrutiny and discussion.
It's just, whatever. Fine, it's all this
I'm not sure what he was saying is related to
performance
that.
art crap. Yes, the audience is so fucking dumb, that this is what you have to do. You have to speed it up and cut everything out, and because they really don't want to have a conversation about what it is to be alive. So it's not a subject they're interested in.
Like in chapter 6 of David Benatar's book, Bad Enough to Have Been, he discusses the permissibility of limited reproduction in the context of a phased extinction. I won't go into the exploration here. The point I'm simply trying to make is that it's something that has at least been subject to examination and exploration in
Yeah. So if I'm just saying, so vegans, if they were 80% of the population was vegan, you don't think they would pass laws against eating meat or farming animals? Of course they would. Be perfectly rational. I mean, it's just such a bullshit argument.
antinatalism. Personally, I've not seen
Maybe I'm missing it, but I just don't see how that's relevant to what I was saying in that part of the video.
exploration or examination in Efilism, where the tensions actually seem to be much more prevalent and severe. Benatar's
Oh, well, fuck you. What you know about Efilism. Thimble and such. And he used to call himself something like an Efilist. That's the joke.
I mean, what he's saying right now is not an argument. It's not addressing the tension that I'm pointing out.
Here. So, it's another one of these people whose philosophy changes every 6 months. Telling everybody else what the words mean.
Yeah, I mean, my view has changed over the years, and part of that has been values, and part of that has been my understanding. But I don't think that invalidates me showing my perspective.
Ridiculous.
on phased extinction is within the context of a relatively immediate endpoint. In Efilism, on the other hand, the permissibility of procreation would be relatively open-ended, with no
The permissibility of procreation would be relatively open-ended in Efilism somewhere. Why would it be open-ended? I don't understand. I would propose that the cleanest choice is to pay the third world to stop making too many babies. So give them lots of perks and incentives. Make it contingent. You want the UN food? Well, this is the price you got to pay for the UN food. You have to breed responsibly. You have to wear a condom now and then, or whatever, pull out or something.
meaningfully identifiable endpoint, as sentient extinction is much harder to achieve and verify than human extinction.
Well, whatever. Verify. Yeah. Just hilarious terminology. The biosphere is a delicate thing, as we're proving, because we're fucking with it already. So there's lots of ways you can fuck with the biosphere, and so there was whole points, where there's massive extinctions on Earth, all that kind of stuff, and all you have to do is have one of those. It's a little more dramatic, right? And that's the end of the game. But whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he says it's delicate. Like, perhaps the biosphere in any specific incarnation is delicate, but in general, the capacity for life to exist is not that delicate. Like, there are, even if you take like extremophiles, for example, they can live in very harsh conditions. But even if you look at the mass extinctions, like sentient life has always remained and then come back and flourished anew. So yeah, it's delicate in this any specific incarnation you look at, but in general, the capacity for life to persist seems to be relatively hardy. Maybe I'm speaking from a place of ignorance there. I might be wrong on that, but yeah.
Commercial. This is insufferable shit. God. Yuck. Yuck. Well, at least that's the best image of him so far.
The next difference is that extinctionism is inherent in Efilism. In fact, Efilism is a species of extinctionism rather than being a type of antinatalism. It's a sentiocentric form of extinctionism.
Oh, Jesus. Centriocentric. Anyway, obviously. And it's just in the context of its extinction for a particular reason. Not extinction because humans suck. Not, it's extinction for the particular evolution, futility, pointless suffering reason.
Rooted in philosophical pessimism. For antinatalism, extinction is simply a practical consequence of the moral duty not to create sentient beings, rather than an explicit goal. Again, I've discussed it.
So again, the moral duty. So again, under antinatalism, frankly, if extinction is your goal, you can get there by still nataling. You just have one kid instead of two. So again, this argument is kind of bullshit because you can just keep playing word games. You don't have to be antinatal. One-child policy in China was essentially an extinction policy, if done completely and permanently. Two people go in, one pops out. I mean, that will get you to zero eventually.
This topic at length in another video if you want to learn more. Violence. The next difference is the potential commitment to violence.
A commitment to it. So I wonder if you'd say that about, again, protesters who get a little bit aggressive on the street and defending animal rights. What's the definition of this violence? Throwing blood on mink coats or something. So where are we going to draw these lines? These fucking silly lines.
Antinatalism does not contain any inherent commitment to violence. The commitment is to not creating sentient beings, and this can, by and large, be done through simple non-action.
All right, so again, the same argument could be made, in the sense that, well, you're just not going to clean up the animals, so you're saying human-centric antinatalism. Because there's no such thing as animal-centric antinatalism. It doesn't exist. You don't have a policy. You don't have an implementing mechanism. So it's just pointless. So the only thing you're talking about is human-centric antinatalism. Fuck that.
Efilism, though, as I've already covered, likely commits someone to supporting at least some use of force, and that use of force can take a variety of forms, but in any real world...
Yeah, so you can't stop rapists by giving them, free bubblegum.
case, violence is going to be part of that. Other animals, and probably many humans, will not voluntarily cease procreating. For extinction to be achieved...
Animals don't voluntarily do anything. So again, it's just we're the ones with the brains driving the bus. If you're going to sit there and let the retards in the bus drive the bus, then the bus is going to crash. So it's just stupid to talk about what the animals intend. Because they can't have intention. They haven't gone to school. They're uneducated morons.
Existing life will have to be terminated if they don't come to a natural end, or their continuation risks the wider...
All animals, all organisms will be terminated. So again, you're just hastening their termination. And the prospect that the animal had some agenda, was going to cure cancer next week, is pretty unlikely. So the fact that you've robbed the animal of some portion of its marvelous existence is just idiotic. So all you're doing is saying, I'm exchanging their horrible slow death for a nice, quick, expedient one. Oh, what a criminal I am.
Project of extinction. This issue seems inherent in Efilism, as the goal of sentient extinction is baked in. Now, to be clear, this does not mean that any specific Efilist supports real-world uses of violence. Nor does...
So again, why even bring this up, real-world uses of violence? So that's what the Americans did when they showed up in World War II, is they're just violent assholes. Fuck you, pretensive asshole. Do you actually...
I feel like, again, he's misunderstood what I was saying. I was saying that Efilists don't have to support any... I already explained this confusion earlier. I used the term real world. What I meant was like violence in the here and now. I was saying, like, you don't have to be, you're not committed to that. Some Efilists have supported uses of violence now. That's on them. But, yeah, I was just saying that Efilism doesn't commit you to having to do that. And he seems to be reacting in a way where what I just said was painting Efilists as supporting violence in the here and now. To be honest, it's not always clear what he is actually saying.
Think the human race. Do you think parents are guilty or not guilty? Are they slave owners? Are they molesters? I mean, they're frankly overtly molesting their children with silly notions and fucktarded ideas. You don't think raising your kid to be a Muslim lunatic is not molestation? What's your definition, fuckhead?
Does it mean that if they support some limited uses of violence in specific instances, that they would support random individuals committing acts of violence with no clear or achievable goal? And it also...
Oh, you mean they're going to figure out how to shoot the enemy instead of their own wife or something? What, they're just going to randomly shoot bullets? I hate life. I'll just randomly shoot bullets. Fuck you.
It doesn't mean that Efilists accept violence that would be gratuitous and open-ended. Theoretical outcomes.
Exactly who supports gratuitous violence? So just show me the channel I can go to that's just about, yes.
I literally just said that. I said they don't... Let's just go back together and listen to what I said. Oh, went too far.
Fuck you.
It doesn't mean that Efilists accept violence that would be gratuitous and open-ended. Theoretical outcomes.
Exactly, yeah. I said Efilists wouldn't necessarily support violence that is gratuitous or open-ended. Let me just listen to that one more time. I definitely said that, right?
It doesn't mean that Efilists accept violence that would be gratuitous and open-ended. Theoretical outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel like he's just completely misunderstanding.
Exactly who supports gratuitous violence? So just show me the channel I can go to that's just about, yes, I'm an Efilist and I'm for gratuitous violence. Just puke. What a jackass. Anyway, I'll try to do a full hour. Part 2. Yeah.
The final difference is each of their theoretical outcomes. What I mean by this is, if we assumed that everyone subscribed to these views, what would happen? As Efilism carries a positive collective duty to bring about sentient extinction,
So at least they didn't say moral.
the theoretical outcome would be sentient extinction. It's pretty explicit. Antinatalism, on the other hand, carries a negative individual duty to not create sentient.
A negative individual duty. So no, it's a positive duty. But anyway, so again, this is just more nonsense about how I won't rape, but I won't stop anybody else from raping. I won't molest kids, but anybody else who wants to, go ahead. Bullshit.
Beings. The theoretical outcome of this being the cessation of human reproduction.
Again, antinatalism just containing a negative duty doesn't mean we shouldn't intervene and prevent harm from happening elsewhere. It just means that's not what's inherently carried under antinatalism. But you can be an antinatalist and also believe other things. It's not like you're just, I'm an antinatalist, I'm not going to reproduce, that is my whole life and all my views. You know, it's like you can have other views, believe other things. I just don't understand why this is such a sticking point for people.
And human breeding of other animals. These result in very different worlds. One is a world devoid of sentient life, and the other is a world still containing sentient life, with just no moral agents that have...
No moral agent, so this is another silly word, right? So no smart animals, just the dumb retards. So, we just let the dumb retards eat each other and fuck each other over and do all that crap. The worst of it. The worst possible piece. So it's like leaving behind human beings in the worst possible conditions. So find the people living in the worst possible conditions, the worst civilization, the worst warlord kind of crappy life, the worst slavery, and preserve that, okay, and throw out all the smart stuff. Yeah, that's a real clever philosophy.
Producing sentient life. Common ground. The only similarity I could identify between antinatalism and
I feel like, again, he's misunderstanding. In this part of the video, all I'm doing is laying out the conceptual difference between the two. I'm not even necessarily saying which one is better or worse.
Efilism is the shared negative view of existence.
Is that what it is? It's not a negative view of existence for the anti-natalist who's just human-centric. Obviously, they think existence is just fine if you're furry and, blah, blah, blah.
Being informed by philosophical pessimism. But even that is kind of questionable. Efilism is firmly rooted in pessimism, but antinatalism doesn't have to be. Antinatalism is often rooted in pessimism, but someone can also be an antinatalist because of the risk argument or the consent argument. Neither of these commit someone to philosophical pessimism.
They can be anti-natalist because they just think there's too many people, and so they'll be un-anti-natalist as soon as there's the right number of people. Or they think the wrong kind of people, there's too many of the wrong kind of people.
I feel like that would more be conditional natalism.
Pessimism. None of this feels like particularly strong ground to maintain that Efilism is the logical endpoint of antinatalism or antinatalism.
It's the smart version of antinatalism. That's right. It takes all the dumb stuff out, and all you have left is the smart part. That's what Efilism is. The smart part of antinatalism. The part that has some sort of rational integrity. Yeah. Oh, God, I probably should do this whole thing, just get over with. But I won't. That's the kind of person I am. Anyway, yeah, no, is that enough for today? It's just what it is. Just whatever. These people are just playing with philosophy. They're just playing with it.
He splits his reaction into two videos, but I've spliced them together so it will go straight into it.
Yeah, they're not, I can't detect any sincerity in their cause. It's just book writers. All right, till the next time, such and so forth and whatnot. I just hate this planet. God. I mean, even if humans didn't suffer at all, I think I have to go just because they're just such assholes. All right, till the next time, such and so forth and whatnot. Time for the donutguy.com video presentation. Yes, part 2 of whatever this is. This pointlessly convoluted rag on the idea of actually doing anything about a problem that might exist. Like all problems should be solved with magic sparkly dust because everything else is an act of violence. Yes, you can't stop imposers by imposing on them. Yeah, no, that's imposing. You can't impose on imposers. Anyway, that kind of thing.
That wasn't what I was saying, but I feel like that's clear by now.
Just a waste of time, actually, but whatever. This is what people do on the internet. Blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, this is what they do.
Pretty explicit. Antinatalism, on the other hand, carries a negative individual duty to not create sentient beings. The theoretical outcome of this being the cessation of human reproduction.
So we know that for a ton of antinatalists, this duty thing ends with just humans and that's it, and it ends with their own activity, which is useless, frankly, because they're not the ones imposing. So saying, I'm not going to impose, and I do nothing to stop imposers, like I saying, I'm not going to kill the Jews, but I'll let somebody else do it. Fuck that.
And human breeding of other animals. These result in very different worlds. One is a world devoid of sentient life, and the other is a world still containing sentient life.
Oh yes, and a silly thing, right? So the animals aren't in human manufactured cages. They're instead in cages manufactured by nature and genetics, and they're in all kinds of monstrous forms and insidiously, assassin bug or something, going around stabbing things and sucking their vital fluids out and that kind of crap. So they're stuck in horrible circumstances, Freddy's nightmare kind of circumstances, and somehow, somehow you have to be a duplicitous hypocrite and think there's some sense in just stopping the one slight form of violation. It's like okay to cage people in aluminum cells, with aluminum bars, but not steel bars. That kind of nonsense.
There's no moral agents that are producing sentient life. Common ground. So
moral agency is irrelevant to the conversation. The moral agency is in our understanding and in our intelligence, and we have an obligation to define the truth. And the truth is, this agency doesn't have anything to do with whether something's being tortured or not. And period. So yeah, it's a duplicity against your own capacity to reason to say it's okay for me to jump out of the bus and let the retard bus crash into the wall. That's ridiculously stupid.
Clarity I could identify between antinatalism and Efilism is the shared negative view of existence, i.e. being informed by philosophical pessimism. But even that is kind of questionable.
Yes, all these titles, instead of any, real understanding of the necessity of solution, that the problem is real and big, and we have to do better than call ourselves heroes. I'm a hero for the cause. I do absolutely nothing. I just, wear a hero sign. Yeah.
Efilism is firmly rooted in pessimism. Antinatalism doesn't have to be. Antinatalism is often rooted in pessimism.
Oh, I hate the whole conversation about pessimism in the sense that when it's actually realism. So it's rooted in the realism of recognizing this quandary of existence, and especially the quandary of being, Frankenstein monster with a sentient capacity, where torture is a real probability.
Someone can also be an antinatalist because of the risk argument or the consent argument.
There you go. So good enough. Yes, they can be. And again, the consent argument applies universally. It doesn't matter whether something's going to be really stupid or really smart. The fact is, that consent isn't gotten. Therefore, you don't have a right to manipulate, impose on the thing. So the creationists are the imposers. Clearly, they're doing violence to the peace and quiet.
Neither of these commit someone to philosophical pessimism. None of this feels like particularly strong ground to maintain that Efilism is the logical endpoint of antinatalism.
Well, what's the endpoint? The endpoint is just describing the fact. Where is the problem? Is the problem with humans being a little too selfish and their civilizations being too messy? Or is the problem in nature itself, in the creation of these chemistry machines that are attempting to take property, take territory? Is it in the design of the living organism, which is just a consumption machine, an imposing machine?
Antinatalism upgraded, or the non-species version of antinatalism.
So whatever. Obviously, I'm just arguing that Efilism is the most concise, reasonable description of what the problem is. And the problem is the living organism is the problem. The machine is the problem. Period.
One can be an antinatalist and an Efilist. They would just simply be two views that they hold in tandem, likely both informed by philosophical pessimism. And even then, there is still that unresolved tension that exists between them, mostly in the duties that they carry.
So we can all wear a bunch of little badges or something. So I did download the stupid video so we don't have to endure the silly, frickin' wasty, gratuitously nonsensical commercial crapola. Oh, novelty. What a cute little word. Novelty. Fuck, is this like My Little Pony or something?
I don't understand what's wrong with the word novelty.
Does Efilism offer anything of philosophical novelty? Much of the
so philosophical novelty. So we know it's not novel. I'm not the first person, the first Efilist, okay? Wasn't the first person to recognize life as shit, okay, when you look at it. And so there's nothing, there's no novelty beyond just a statement that, I don't really want to use the word novelty. I want to use words like originality or unique, but I don't need to bother with the word novel. Yeah, so I'll just get rid of that because it's confusing. And instead I'll use some more direct language, life spelled backwards.
worldview is simple philosophical pessimism. Take the following excerpts from Arthur Schopenhauer's On the Sufferings of the World.
Who cares? So again, all these little excerpts from people as if these people have some special quality that we instantly know they're worth listening to, that they know the truth. I mean, that's really not the argument. The argument is to get other people to understand, okay, not to recite. And, making statements about what I believe, no, I don't know if that's very useful. I call myself a. Is that going to help anybody?
It's kind of ironic because I'm pretty sure Schopenhauer I think it's fair to assume that Schopenhauer is probably responsible for more people realizing the fundamentally broken nature of life than Emendem is, and yet he's poo-pooing Schopenhauer here. Yeah, I don't know.
Understand? No.
Happiness and satisfaction always implies some desire fulfilled, some state of pain brought to an end. This explains the fact that...
So we know it's not necessarily a state of pain, but it's a state of less than satisfaction. So, but it doesn't really have to be a state of what somebody might call pain. It's more like a state of deprivation. So yes, you have to be hungry, you have to be thirsty to really gain any gratification out of these things. And we see how people struggle with their horniness, okay, and trying to find a way to make it gratifying. So we see the addictive part of it, the fact that people become insatiable as they attempt to breathe cleaner and cleaner air.
We generally find pleasure to be not nearly so pleasant as we expected, and pain very much more painful. The pleasure in this world, it has been said...
So wait, we do this, so that's the question, is most people aren't doing that. Most people are saying that somehow the silver lining is worth the hurricane. Go ahead, kill my kids. I'll survive it. No big deal. No, and that's the attitude of most people. They are not driven from life by these horrors because they have a bit of a sadistic, ghoulish nature, as long as it's not happening too much to them. And I guess that's the bottom line. As long as they are not the ones with a broken neck, broken necks are sort of okay.
It outweighs the pain. Or at any rate, there is an even balance between the two. If the reader wishes to see shortly whether this statement is true, let him compare the respective feelings of two animals, one of which is engaged in eating the other. We are like lambs in a field, disporting themselves under the eye of the butcher.
Okay, so I guess this is all okay, to describe the fact that, the gratification of the routine hunger certainly isn't, as a feeling, a good exchange for the horrifically unpleasant torment and torture endured by the thing being, disassembled.
Who chooses out first one and then another for his prey. So it is that our good days, we are all unconscious of the evil fate may have presently in store for us. Sickness, poverty, mutilation, loss of sight.
Yes, and all this stuff we're causing by displacing and by being high maintenance. So people do actually starve on Earth, and we actually do waste food that could feed them 100 times over, that kind of thing. Just the fact that our inefficiency in existing is another type of strangulation and torment and torture and murder. So the little murders, might add up to more than the obvious big murders of having an earthquake and a building fall on top of you, and you have to spend the next 24 hours slowly dying.
Reason. And this passage is from his essay on the vanity of existence. Life presents itself chiefly as a task. The task, I mean, of subsisting at all.
God, there's a lot of distortion in the background.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just the struggle. You have a choice: struggle or die, or struggle and then die. I mean, there's no good choice. So if the choice is as reasonable procrastinators, we basically just say, well, let's just save the dying for some other day. Okay, I'm really not in the mood, and we'll just do the struggling thing instead. So we'll die. We'll have like the half death to keep putting off the whole death. But yes, obviously we just add up a bunch of halves that end up being much bigger than the whole death. And obviously people, there's lots of examples now where the industrial medical complex has people perpetually dying for 20 or 30 years. I mean, they just go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next mitigation. So I don't frankly want to die more than once. So it seems kind of obvious to evade half dying and then half dying and then half dying, because that's going to add up to a lot more than one death.
So if this is accomplished, life is a burden, and then there comes the second task of doing something with that which has been won.
So it's not so much about this, what is your life, because your life is only one piece of the puzzle. And so the idea that I'm not feeling enough of a burden to call it shit is irrelevant noise, because the
Oh, that's really annoying, that background distortion. Let me just see if it's still...
immune to those bad days. Even dig that up.
The test of a sober examination. No one.
Oh, it ends
Okay,
there.
but I just spent 30 minutes giving you every...
And it's still there. Oh my god. Can you guys hear the distortion that I'm talking about? Does it come through to you? Let me know in the chat. If it doesn't, then we can continue watching. He honestly isn't saying anything really of substance in response to what I'm saying. Most of the stuff actually directed to me is just like personal insults. So if you guys can hear the distortion, then I'll probably skip forward to the bit where it finishes. But let me know. Okay, you guys can... Shivering is saying yeah, but I don't know if that is to something in the chat. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
You know, is there sufficient suffering to negate whatever the song and dance is that you're selling as some great accomplishment of a
Okay, cool. Cheers. Okay, you guys can hear it.
because it doesn't know how to. So why even dig that up? There's no name. Second, it's, you know,
Can be pluralist and
it would have nothing to do with the subject. Because it's not really a word. It's not a concept. So grounded in philosophical pessimism. Sounds like your pessimism isn't for the very reason, okay, that all these sentient organisms are
Okay, it's kind of better here, so we can go from here.
being horribly consumed in this silly, fucking, pointless DNA farce.
components are already captured by existing philosophies, but this specific combination of views seems to have some following.
I mean, it's just, you know, this whole optimism pessimism thing. It doesn't go anywhere, because there's plenty of pessimists who are pessimistic because, oh, we're not getting to our transhumanism quickly enough, or you know, they're bitching about something that's, you know, exactly the opposite. You know, that we're not progressing fast enough, we're not flying garbage cans and all that kind of crap. You know, it's not a Dick Tracy enough world for them. You know, so what's the point of talking about philosophical pessimism? It doesn't mean anything. There's lots of religious people who are real pessimistic because, you know, Jesus isn't coming back very fast. You got stuck on a train somewhere. You know.
That's really annoying. There's still a type of feedback, which we're just going to have to let the feedback go.
And so it seems valuable to have some identifying term for it.
Oh, God, it seems valuable to have an identifying term. Why? Valuable how? How is that valuable? So yes, it's good for us to be able to say what we are. You know, you're pro-molestation.
He just said, how is it valuable? And then he seems like he's going to go on to the case for saying why it's valuable. And he coined the term, so surely he thought it was valuable.
Anti-molestation, you know, pro-death, against death, you know, that kind of thing. So that's okay, but and the whole point of the word Efilism is just to say, yes, this is the reason why I am anti, okay, what is the facts of life.
Before I get into any critiques of Efilism, I want to express where my...
Oh, this wasn't a critique. Oh. So when you said it lacked novelty, that wasn't saying it has a very small penis. Yes, it was, moron. Ugh.
sympathies lie. I too hold a view of existence that is captured by philosophical pessimism. If you want to check out my video...
Oh, brother. So another, this is just so, disgusting. I mean, it's one thing to reference, you know, to say, look, if you need an argument about religion, here it is, blah, 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 blah. Just leave a list and, you know, you don't have to sit there and do it in the video.
I've linked that in the description. I do think it would be better if there were no sentient life in the universe. But just because I think that...
It would be better doesn't mean I think I should have to do anything about it. It's not my job. That's what he's saying.
What's he talking about? I'm not going to reproduce myself. I'm vegan, so I'm not, you know, I've divested from actively funding animals being bred into existence. I donate to charities that are expected to avoid births coming into, births occurring. I run this YouTube channel, which hopefully has some impact. I do fundraisers. Like, what does he want me to say? I don't know. Like, just because I'm not in ideological lockstep with this guy, somehow I just like don't care and don't want to move towards a better world.
That's really what he's saying. It's not my job.
Would be better if sentience never arose. Doesn't mean I think we should embark on some campaign to eradicate it from the universe.
Right, so rape is bad, but don't stop it. Molestation is bad, don't stop it. Gratuitously wasted suffering, torment, slavery, imposition is bad, but I'm not going to do anything about it. What the fuck does that have to do with me? Cunt.
That's, whatever.
I also share a concern for other animals. Domesticated animals are treated as slaves, and they are systemically butchered and tortured on a mass scale.
I mean, compared to, they have it pretty fucking good compared to.
Hey, wild animals also
I mean, except for the ones that, frankly, people cling too long to their animals and impose surgeries and all kinds of crap, and that's very ugly.
face great hardships, and they're ones that they themselves have very limited capacity to be able to remedy. As John Stuart Mill said in his essay Nature.
Oh, brother. So he basically said, look, I'm not going to do anything about it. And okay, yeah, people own pets, that's well, I'm not going to do anything about that either. I'm not going to do a damn thing about a goddamn thing. Okay, fuck you.
In So the Truth, nearly all things which men are hanged or imprisoned for doing to one another are nature's everyday performances. The phrases which ascribe perfection to the course of nature can only be considered as the exaggerations of poetic or divine.
Oh, shit. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the fact is that nature's a criminal, and the fact is humans are criminal. It is criminal to impose on kids. It's criminal to indoctrinate. It's criminal to do all these things, and yet those things are applauded.
Shivering says, your channel definitely had an impact on me. I appreciate that, Shivering. I mean, that, I enjoy doing this. That is part of why I do it. But it's to have an impact. So I appreciate you sharing that with me, Shivering.
By the culture as some sort of meritorious thing, It's just a fact. It's rewarded, quite heavily, in fact, now. Where, I mean, if, everybody who's going to be a sports winner.
I'm actually kind of curious, because I don't know which way this poll would go. I'm going to keep the video playing, but I'm going to put a poll in the chat to ask, are you, do you have a more positive view of Emendum, or do you have a more negative view of Emendum? I'm, genuinely curious I'm not doing this. I'm actually not sure which way the people who are watching this would go. And I'm not doing this in any way to try and get a negative result and be mean or anything like that. I'm actually genuinely curious how people perceive this guy. So I'll keep the video going and I will put a poll.
Is going to be created, from birth.
Emotional feeling, not intended to stand the test of a sober examination. No one, either religious or irreligious, believes that the hurtful agencies of nature, considered as a whole, promote good purposes in any other way than by enticing human rational creatures to rise up and struggle against them.
Okay, I fell asleep.
I think that we should, in a considered manner, in principle, intervene to help wild animals.
Well, so what is this? In a principled manner, help to intervene, blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? You would go pet them. What? It's just, they're there, it's okay. So when they're getting eaten by the lion, you can go over there, just tap on the forehead. There, it's okay. I gotta dry your tears. Fuck you.
As and where we have a good reason to think that we can do so effectively.
So by your definition, so he's the great definer of what's an appropriate intervention.
I've put the poll in the chat, so hopefully you can vote on it. And Kathy is saying your opinion of him is irrelevant to the argument, though. Yeah, I'm not trying to tie this to any form of argument. Yeah, that's not what I'm doing.
Injured. Yeah, fuck. Oh God. So again, is culling valid? So if there's, if animals are going to outreach their, capacity to stay within their boundaries, so to speak, and they're going to invade, human cities or something, should anything be done to stop them? Anything at all?
But don't share this sympathy. I really encourage them to look into this topic. One great essay to start with is Debunking the Idyllic View of Natural Processes by Oscar Hort. Having shared my sympathies, here are my...
Okay, so his sympathies. He has no sympathy with anything that'll actually fix a problem. So he's completely unsympathetic to any suggestion that will actually fix something, because to fix something means you had to impose your fixing, and that's wrong.
Critiques. Nirvana fallacy.
Oh, brother. So this will have nothing to do. Obviously, nirvana has nothing to do with Efilism. Your personal escape, isn't the subject at all.
I think he's completely misunderstood what the nirvana fallacy is. Nirvana fallacy is not this is where it gets the name, but it's not about personal escape or the religious sense of nirvana. It's a fallacy that appeals to a perfect solution that is put forward as perfect, but it's actually just very implausible. So I give an example in the video about traffic accidents, but we can continue.
Critique of Efilism is that I believe it commits the nirvana fallacy, or the perfect solution fallacy. It presents what is claimed to be a perfect solution.
I mean, it's just where? Who's presenting this perfect solution? Where is that? I mean, beyond the fact that the whole universe just blowing up or something, the instantaneous, complete destruction of.
And I just wanted to say, Johannes, thank you for your kind words. And just a reminder to vote on the poll.
Material complexity. Outside of that possibility, where is the argument for the perfect solution? Who's arguing for there's a perfect solution? Let's all just take the never wake up berry. What the fuck is this shit?
All problems, ending all suffering by ending all life, but one which is completely implausible.
So again, he says it's implausible when the Earth has done this over and over again. Where it's completely changed.
The Earth hasn't done this over and over again. If it had done it, then we wouldn't be here, right?
The boundaries. There's no dinosaurs, right? So let's just say that brain enabledness is like dinosaurism. Well, clearly there's probably a catastrophe that could take place that would take out all the brain enabled organisms. So again, just bullshit. You can't solve the problem. You can't. When of course it's a physics argument. Frankly, what do you know about physics, douchebag? What do you know about the physics shit for brain? Do you know anything at all about the physics of it?
someone devising a whole philosophy around ending global traffic accidents by putting a total ban on the use of vehicles. Yes.
So who did that, right? Who suggested that somehow banning it is going to be enough? And obviously the argument is that all you really have to do is incentivize.
I'm going to be ending the poll soon, so get your votes in. Only half of the people watching have voted, so get your votes in the chat. Not in the... It will appear in the chat, but in the poll.
It. And we know that the only thing you have to do is educate children. The whole thing is a huge... We win gigantically if you just educate children. So if they're educated, they don't replicate sufficiently to maintain existence. Fact. So there's the draconian solution.
That's such a simplification of the dynamics and the situation we're in.
Educate humans. Yeah, ooh, how scary is that? Oh.
This is logically possible, and it would stop all traffic accidents, which are a problem, just like it's logically possible to end all sentient.
So this is obviously some point of, this is the bait and switch and the changing the goalpost and straw man. Yeah, this is the grass man or something. It's not even good straw. Bullshit argument. Okay. Clearly there are ways of engineering. Okay, the demise of the animal biosphere. It's an engineering problem. It can be engineered.
Life to stop suffering, which is also a problem, but both solutions.
All right, we can end the poll.
Are extremely implausible. So it seems like...
So again, he's saying that, and based on what physics?
Okay, so the poll results are in. How do you view Emendum? Overall positive was 56% and overall negative was 43%, which is interesting. I honestly had no idea which way it would go, but it seems like, I mean, it's somewhat half and half, but like there's a definite preference towards Emendum, which is interesting. Yeah, thank you for voting.
So what law of physics says it's implausible that there's some thermodynamic problem, some energy problem, some problem somehow? There's no problem. There's nothing preventing it. And like I said, the very fact that just look what a little bit of temperature increase will cause on Earth. The catastrophic flooding, all kinds of mayhem.
There's very limited value in discussing them when trying to address the concerns that they are concerned with.
Yeah, but why discuss the specifics of all of these technical arguments about the physics of engineering the terminal event? We're a long way from getting the humans to agree on it in the first place, and being respectful of democratic process. That's the first. You don't go to war until you've at least negotiated a solution. So first you negotiate, and that's the process we're in. We're in the process of negotiating, and you're saying to the opposition, don't negotiate. No. Their whole theory is implausible and impossible. So don't listen.
Making the perfect the enemy of the good.
Oh, brother. So this is the scary part. Somehow it's good if we just keep it alive and let it die forever. Yeah, that's the good.
The second criticism of Efilism is that it seems to encourage utopian thinking. I have seen endless fanciful thought experiments conjured up, like the red button, to supposedly deliver us from suffering.
So again, the red button was just a point made about confidence and the fact that somebody has to act. So it's the lifeboat argument. You're on a lifeboat. You have a gun. All right. You know that if you leave it to democracy, everybody dies. Okay, horribly. That's what the democracy is going to vote for. Everybody's going to vote to live, and so they're not going to vote for what needs to be done. So do you captain the boat or do you not? So we're back to do and do not do. And whatever, democracy or social contract or all this other crap doesn't mean anything. What's the outcome going to be? Disaster or success?
It'd be much better if those minds and that time were put towards achievable goods. Playing a role in smaller changes is not going to solve the whole problem of suffering, but it's not
going to do anything. It's not even going to get near it. It's not even going to brush up against it because the whole problem is in the animal sphere. It's not in this human thing. So all of these little human trivial bullshit doesn't mean a goddamn thing because all the real suffering is in that biosphere. Okay, and you're not going to be able to break that accidentally. You're going to have to break that on purpose.
Achievable. There are whole organizations out there, established groups of people, working on practical means of alleviating
suffering. So it's just such a waste. Yes, and somehow the Efilists are opposed. Somehow they're saying, don't spend any money on morphine, don't spend any money on mitigating pain and suffering. None of them are saying that. They're all saying, yes, we should have a universal right to die. We should be freed from this arrogant putzes like you telling us what our obligations are, and we should choose for ourselves. That kind of thing. So bullshit on this, that there's some you're sacrificing, gene therapy because you believe in Efilism. You're going to suck up all the resources on the Efilism thought. Just having the idea of Efilism consumes billions and trillions of dollars worth of human resources. No, it doesn't consume a goddamn thing. It's a thought, for fuck's sake. God.
I'm so confused. Like, I'm really confused. So he's saying Efilism doesn't take up any resources, but he's literally produced like tens of thousands of videos. Like, this is clearly been like a major preoccupation of his. I know he's spoken about other stuff, but like, he's someone who's clearly willing to dedicate a massive amount of time and energy to doing something that he sees as making the world a better place. He could have used his time and energy in a much more effective way. Like something which actually has evidence behind it to that it will do good, right? So clearly these ideas can capture people in such a way where they spend significant time thinking, speculating, doing whatever about them. Like, imagine if he had instead gone into like academia and studied like how to improve the lives of wild animals in some way, like animal ethics does, Wild Animal Initiative or something like this, or written like palatable books for people like Suffering Focused Ethics by Magnus Vinding or something like this, you know, like he's literally the embodiment of the critique that I've just made, and yet he's dismissing it.
Damn it, what a pile of shit.
We shouldn't make the perfect the enemy of the good, especially when the perfect seems to be a pipe dream. And to be clear, Efilism doesn't preclude someone from supporting these smaller, short...
Well, you just implied that it did, you fuck. You're saying that somehow you are going to compromise the good, okay, by trying to do the gooder. Somehow trying to do the gooder will completely distract you and you'll throw away all this good stuff. You fucking lying sack of shit. That's what you just did. I'm not implying that somehow Efilism could get in the way of the good. I'm just stating that Efilism gets in the way. Fuck you.
Let me just watch that bit again, because I don't know what he's...
That's what you just did. I'm not implying that somehow Efilism, just having the idea of Efilism consumes billions and trillions of dollars worth of human resources. No, it doesn't consume a goddamn thing. It's a thought, for fuck's sake. God damn it, what a pile of shit.
We shouldn't make the perfect the enemy of the good, especially when the perfect seems to be a pipe dream. And to be clear, Efilism doesn't preclude someone from supporting these smaller, short...
Well, you just implied that it did, you fuck. You're saying that somehow you are going to compromise the good, okay, by trying to do the gooder.
No, I was saying conceptually, yeah. So the first thing I was saying was I feel like this is generally a distraction from like actual productive things that you can do with the same concerns you have. And the second thing was saying Efilism doesn't conceptually preclude someone from supporting more short-term things. Those two things can be true at once. I don't know. I think he's just massively misunderstood.
Somehow trying to do the gooder will completely distract you and you'll throw away all this good stuff. You fucking lying sack of shit. That's what you just did. I'm not implying that somehow Efilism could get in the way of the good. I'm just stating that Efilism gets in the way. Fuck you.
Time efforts to do good. But I worry that Efilism can draw focus away from more...
How? How does it draw the focus? What it can do
Like you for like over 10 years.
is make people recognize that, yeah, saving a life is just perpetuating or extending a life, and that it doesn't undo death and it doesn't undo the harm. So what's the point in a way? You know, that there's a point where, hey, it doesn't make any sense. And he's saying that kind of a conversation is somehow some horrible impediment to our the thing what we should be doing is wearing our little pink ribbons and saying, oh, we must cure this, and we must cure that, and we must fix this, and we must fix all this little trivial shit. So I would argue he's the problem, right? He's a band-aid maker, all right? He doesn't want to invest anything in cures. He just wants to invest in fucking goddamn band-aids. Go be a nurse or something if this is what you want to do with your existence. You don't want to prevent, you don't want to stop. Instead, you want to sit there and feel people's pain in your fake and phony way.
Achievable goods to a grand solution that is liable to the other critiques that I'm laying out. Justifying violence and a lack of appreciation...
Oh, fuck you.
...for fallibility.
I mean, really, this is just a fuck you statement justifying violence. When you're talking about people incarcerating animals and torturing them and brutally killing them. Oh, yes, we're the violent fuckers. Yeah, fuck you. God damn, goddamn piece of ugly...
Like, none of this is what I've said.
Stupid moronic shit. Yeah, what you deserve, you dumb fucking ugly piece of shit.
The critique is that this form of utopian thinking can encourage people to commit or support horrific acts.
Like... Yeah, I don't know.
Any realistic scenario...
Where is that? Where exactly is that, you fucking lying sack of shit? Where is there a single argument in provoking people to go out and kill anything or commit an act of violence against anybody? Where? Where is that? And I can play hundreds of my videos where I've said exactly the opposite. It's completely unproductive for the animal rights activists to go act up too aggressively, because then that's all...
Yeah, hopefully it's clear by now to anyone watching. He's just misunderstanding what I've said. I'm not saying the things that he's saying I'm saying.
They look like. Fuck you.
Support such an endeavor would presumably support the one that minimizes harm, but in reality...
I mean, I've pointed out we already have won the argument. The only enemy we have is ignorance. Human ignorance. Stupid humans breed. Stupid humans do lots of other things that are really bad too. So yeah, let's have a war against stupid humans.
It's difficult to identify which means would actually minimize harm, and even then, it's not obvious that we would actually be able to implement that means in practice.
So again, more bullshit that we somehow can't do anything regarding our behavior to decrease the magnitude of the biosphere's liberty to torture, when of course we can.
Yes. We also need to account for human fallibility. Humans can be wrong about the conclusions we draw. We need to be really careful when drawing conclusions that justify enacting significant violence on others.
So again, who has suggested acting violence on others? Where has that even been a suggestion? that any of that was necessary. Behind somebody saying, well, in every conflict, there's a point where you have to have a civil war. But that's not even being what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that we've already won. Okay, all you have to do is have intelligent humans on Earth, and this isn't even an argument. Then everybody's basically just going to have an argument or a conversation about means. How do we implement? But there's not going to be any substantial argument about the fact that we're already heading there, because the majority of people won't be breeding sufficiently to replace the population. So the demise of the human race would already be a given, and it would just be, the conversation would just be about the members of the human race who were concerned for the animals would be using their energy to say, well, we're going to have a backup plan for the animals. We're not going to just die. We're not going to sit there as the bus driver and have a heart attack and have no backup. Something like that. But I mean, what is this? I mean, this whole idea to try to contrive this into a story about violence. Fuck you. It's like slandering suicidal people with the term they're doing violence to themselves. Fuck you.
Many despicable acts have been committed throughout history by people who were convinced that they were doing good, or even had the solution.
Oh, and that's our fault. That's the Efilism fault somehow. And again, we're guilty by what association exactly? Where has there been any defense of any violence beyond the violence that happens for good causes? Beyond the Americans showing up in Europe to save the day? Beyond that, give me your description of what's been defended as violence or terrorism or any of that crap. You fucking liar.
To all of our problems. It's also worth noting that this standard for violence would also have implications for other situations. Under this,
Again, just to be clear, he thinks I've said the opposite to what I've actually said. He's not listening to what I'm saying. I feel like he's just being too much of a hothead and not actually, like, words are coming out of my mouth and they sound vaguely reminiscent to other things he has heard from people who disagree with him, and he's superimposing those words onto what I'm saying, and in turn is just completely misunderstanding what I'm saying in his head, and then getting worked up about it.
standard, presumably someone would be justified in ending the lives of an isolated population on an island.
Anybody is justified if they merely have a rational argument that can't be countered. So yes, it's just the way it is. I'm sorry, that's the way the world works. Okay, if somebody has a belief and they don't have any doubt about it, what are you supposed to be arguing? That they're not supposed to invest in what they believe in the deepest part of their existence? So I'm not defending, of course I would never defend some religious kook that blows up an abortion clinic, but the fact that that's going to manifest in human beings is just a fact. I can't find fault with the terrorists who flew the goddamn airplanes into the buildings, in the sense that all I can see is how you got to be damn courageous, to go down with their ship. So obviously they had a pretty secure confidence that things are going to be better because of the act. So how do I undo that? How do I undo the fact that human beings have that perception? And how are you going to argue that they should have known which side was right and which side was wrong? They should have somehow known that, even though they spent their whole life indoctrinated into a completely opposite belief system. So the whole argument here is human beings need to be educated so they don't fall into the trap of being deluded morons, jihading for a fable.
The wider world has no contact with or knowledge.
I mean, look, you could even say all of these people that have kids are deluded. They have this delusion that it's all going to work out just fine. Everything's going to be just fine. It'll be worth it. Their kid will be just so happy with their decision, blah, 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 blah. So all those delusions are okay, and the violence that ends up taking place because of those delusions is all okay? Fuck you. I mean, he's just trying to pigeonhole the anti-people into being the terrorists, when we know who the terrorists are the fucking pronatalists.
And will not come to learn of their demise if violence was the only means. And that's because for all intents and purposes, on this local scale, that would be the extinction of sentient life. If this seems at all troubling, then it should give someone hesitation for drawing the same conclusion about all sentient life generally. Now, to clarify, I'm not saying that violence is never justified. We can all think of instances where violence is justified by self-defense.
You're just saying, what my definition is okay, your definition sucks. Yeah, okay, same to you, fuckhead. Oh, what useless tripe. I'm not saying. You just said it. You just implied that even the thought of, we might have to go to war to solve slavery, well, fuck that. Fuck that. Yeah, we can't do that. Fuck you. This is obviously not the hero of the story.
Saying is that utopian thinking can lead us to rationalize much more violence than we're actually justified in inflicting. Violence that in reality probably isn't going to achieve.
So what's your example? Sure, give me these great examples you have from history where, something besides one lone lunatic. Okay, besides that, where's your evidence of this tragedy of the rebel fighters?
The thing that we want it to. Hard to verify end goal. My fourth critique of Efilism is that it has an end goal that seems to be almost impossible to verify.
So again, what's this verify thing? What is that? Why is it like somebody has to hang around to verify? Well, too ridiculous.
How would you know when sentient extinction has been achieved?
Well, how would you know there's no God? It's just too ridiculous.
Even some life behind could allow the return of the circumstances.
Yeah, failure is a possibility, so try to eliminate all possible avenues of failure. So what do you want? He wants a double doomsday machine. So we have to build a doomsday machine, okay, and then we have to build one in space. And so then the AI in space can analyze the function of the doomsday machine and figure out whether it left anything behind. And if it's anything's left behind, then it can blow it up a second time. How's that? And then we can have a third one on Saturn. It's the third backup. And then we can have a fourth one on Uranus. And yes, they would all take care of the situation. Fucking asshole.
Efilism was aiming to eradicate. This again seems like very shaky ground for the justification of violence and
so again, the justification for violence. What violence has anyone justified or even suggested as anywhere close to the near future? Anything possible? What? Where is that? I mean, the very fact that I guess this idiot thinks that somehow the Muslim-Jew thing is going to just disappear. It's just going to go away. Yeah, someday it's just going to go away. It's going to just evaporate into, oh yes, it was just a semantics argument.
Human reproduction. Even if this isn't a flaw in the Efilist ideas, it is a flaw in carrying out Efilism in practice. And whilst the Efilist view can be...
So you could argue that being a Jew is being divisive. That you're provoking the problem. So, the simple solution is to stop being a Jew. And then the problem is solved. We don't have a Jew problem anymore because there's no Jews to be a problem. Is that viable? Is that realistic? Hilarious.
Restricted to just Earth rather than the whole...
And this is in the context where that's exactly what's happening to natalism. Natalism is choosing to become non-existent. It's the losing philosophy among intelligent brains. Fact.
universe, which would make this less of an issue to verify. It wouldn't eradicate the issue. Lack of clarity on individual duties.
Oh, brother, I didn't know we all had an individual duty because we call ourselves an Efilism. Oh, you're full of duties now. Here's your whole list. You gotta clean this, you gotta wipe that, you gotta wash that. Fuck you. This isn't about chores.
Finally, my fifth critique is the lack of clarity surrounding individual duties. I've already spoken about this, so I'm going to go over it again here. But the relationship between an individual's duties under Efilism and this collective duty it attributes.
So what is this collective part anyway? There's some group duty? I mean, it would be nice if an organization, just the idea of having organizations and you get your tax exempt status, you do certain things to make the organization more viable. But all those basically are just cheats, and that's what has a bunch of shitty ideas being facilitated is through this process of organizing organizations. When all there really is there should be a way for people to support simple missions. Like you could just have this idea that we're going to spend some money to bribe people to not have kids in the third world or something, and people could just contribute to a direct cause that does that very thing.
To humanity to bring about sentient extinction really needs to be examined and fleshed out. There are potentially major conflicts that haven't been fully laid out, let alone rectified.
Oh, like, so you had all this time in this video to lay them out and rectify them, so why didn't you do that? Oh, who knows?
So hopefully that has sketched out some of the conceptual terrain.
Yeah, the conceptual terrain by a duplicitous, hypocritical, shit-talking know-nothing. Thank you very much, Mr. Know-Nothing.
Of Efilism. I've gone back and forth on Efilism and have been very...
Right, so you're a wishy-washy, mishy-mushy, ridiculously silly, fence-walking pile of shit. You stated those are probably, on both sides of a war. Those are the first people that should get shot, are the fence-walkers. Just a nuisance.
Confused on the topic in the past. I used to use the label myself and then stopped once I got...
Right, you're just a spy. you're an infidel.
Got a better understanding of it. If you're at all confused on the issue in either direction, that's completely understandable.
I don't know what's confusing. There's no God. We're biological machines. It's a deterministic universe, meaning that biology has to slowly acquire function. It doesn't get it instantaneously. The universe doesn't just bestow you with knowledge and understanding. You have to go through all this hard work to get it. Blah 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 blah. Life, death, struggle, eek eek. Gurgle, gurgle. Yeah.
Involves big and complicated ideas. This world is messed up, and sometimes it's hard to know what to do.
Oh fuck! It's just so ridiculous. So I was an Efilism. I just didn't know it. When I was 7 years old, I could figure out this is way too messy. What the fuck am I doing here? All right, I'm not stupid enough to sit there and play a game this dumb. Why am I in Vegas? Okay, I didn't drive here. I don't want to gamble with anything. Okay, especially my the precious.
If you're motivated by the ideas behind Efilism, my suggestion would not be to spend time devising means around a fanciful goal to bring about sentient extinction.
So who's doing that? I mean, again, the goal is just a technical means thing. You're just saying, is there some way to catastrophically fuck with Earth? And of course, the technology.
What does he mean? Who's doing that? He's been doing that for years and years and years.
Technology exists. It's doable. Blah blah blah. It just has to be your intent. It's not going to happen accidentally. You're not going to go to the bathroom and shit the doomsday device.
To work on more practical means of reducing harm, increasing the access to contraception, working towards
rubbing the blue pony, rub the blue pony.
a world where there are strong legal protections for animals and their property.
Oh yeah, this is whatever this is, right? The Strong Legal Protection Act. That'll be nothing. Just like all the right to die legislation that's on nothing. Just a placeholder for the real thing. Just an empty gesture, pretending we've solved the problem and it solves nothing.
This is abolished, and supporting research into the methods of alleviating the suffering of wild animals.
Why would you waste the resources on that? Okay, when the argument is, no, let's waste the resources on educating people about the fact that we evolved on planet Earth, because that's the big win. I mean, I wish they did that. They did surveys and they just say, let's find all the people who believe we evolved here on Earth and then see what their procreation numbers are. Like atheists even. See what's the birth rate for atheists versus Muslims. Yeah, and it'll tell you a lot about what the fucking problem is.
And preventing the potential rise of sentient AI. These seem like more practical.
So this is just, the silliest of baby talks. There's no prospect that a synthetic AI that is really just a, what do you call it when something just pulls crap, it's just an algorithm, will ever be sentient. There's no way to make sentience. There's no way to engineer it. There's no way to do the laboratory experiment, because the thing that's going to feel is going to feel long before you've created the mechanism for it to say, I feel. You're not going to be able to make the feeling part connect to the thinking part. And the thinking part isn't even real thinking, because our thinking is actually connected to feeling. But anyway, I mean, it's just displays his ignorance that he would even say that there's a prospect of those two things becoming connected. Algorithms that spider the internet and collect words is somehow going to be sentient. There's absolutely no reason. It's more reason to think your calculator will be sentient.
And achievable things that are guided by the same motivations. Hopefully you found this exploration interesting. Whether or not you agree with it, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.
Again, deserve should have something to do with it. Get what you fucking deserve, you shit-talking sack of goddamn garbage. All right, what is this a picture of? What the fuck is this? Some lake on Mars?
All right, I feel like that is it, and we don't need to hear any more insults. Cool. All right. Well, that was his 2-hour response. So, I feel like that is everything. We have nearly been going for 4 hours. So this has been a mega stream. Yeah. I don't know what I can say at this point. I just feel like, yeah, there's been some things where there's just been a difference in view. There's been misunderstandings. And another thing which my brain has gone now, my brain is kind of fried. But yeah, I feel like I've given a decent sort of overview to of my thoughts to the responses to my video. I'm sure there's things I've missed on random comments people have made in different places or whatever. But hopefully that's a general sort of, I've kind of engaged with at least some of the responses. Yeah, thank you everyone for watching. That was a bit of a mega one, got very into the weeds at some point. Thank you people for joining. We've got Duz says thanks for the stream. Thanks Duz. Thank you everyone else like Kathy, Matthew, Nadia, Flupval, Shivering, loads of people. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the people who supported Nadia, Bovine, the other person who knows who they are. I think that is everything. Next week, very quickly, next week I will be doing a stream for International Antinatalism Day, April 9th. I will be reacting to... well, one thing that I know I will be reacting to is David Benatar and Matti Haili had a discussion on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast. So I will be reacting to that amongst hopefully a few other videos. So if there's anything you'd like me to react to that is antinatalism related for International Antinatalism Day, let me know. It will also be a fundraiser. So if you want to send some money to a good cause, then donate during that live stream. It will all be going to MSI Reproductive Choices, Marie Stopes, and it will be matched. So any donations you send in that stream will be doubled. So if you send £5, it'll be £10, up to £150. So I think that is everything. Thank you everyone for joining, and I will catch you all in the next one.